Live from Golden Eagle Comics, this is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1542, the 10th anniversary of Comic Geek Speak. Woo!
Applause!
Welcome to the show. I'm Brian Chrisman.
I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Peter Rios.
I'm Matt.
I'm Chris Eberly.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Kevin Moyer.
And I'm Kevin Moyer.
Piss off.
Thanks.
Who's Kevin?
Started already. Well, welcome to everybody listening out there on the stream. Hopefully we're not too loud and it sounds good. If not, there's no much I can do about it. We got a basic recording equipment here at the Golden Eagle Comics.
Talking to the mic.
Well, I don't want to get in your way there, sir.
He's yelling at us.
Anyway, just welcome to the show. We've got nothing planned, so here we go.
We've got nothing planned.
No, it was
great.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, good night, everybody. I'll start off real quick. It was 10 years ago. Peter and Brian started the show. One quick question: how did you get the show out there to people and get people to want to listen to the show? Because I don't even know that. How did you get started with the show as far as like advertising and promoting it?
Well, you just put it on the internet and you let people find it.
Really?
Yeah, we did zero promotion or anything. You know, there weren't that many podcasts, so people who wanted to listen to podcasts just found us. There was no trickery. There were no ads. There was no shouting from a mountaintop or anything. It was
no Twitter, no Facebook.
No, that wasn't even.
There was a blog.
Yeah,
right.
we had a blog.
Oh, yeah, it was at the blog spot.
Oh, wow. Like on those very old gray T-shirts we used to have?
Weren't you screen printing those shirts initially?
Yes.
Yeah, in the basement.
In the basement.
Instead of a game night, it was print T-shirts.
We were running our own sweatshop.
Ben and Matt weren't old enough to do that yet.
We recorded a couple days before the March 7th, and we released
Right.
the first episode.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we did 2 episodes the first day, right?
Yeah.
Right from the start, we were like cranking stuff out. Ridiculous.
Yeah. It was the first. I remember Brian emailed about doing the show, and it was perfect because I had just come out of a long relationship, and I was miserable. I remember Kevin taking me to come see The Incredibles. He was like, I said, he's like, call you. You want to go to the movies? He said, no, it wasn't a question. You're really. So thankfully, this thing rolled around because you put the creative energy into it, and it's been.
So we saved you from 10 years of depression,
Oh my God.
and anxiety, and stuff like that.
I was on the bridge and I got an email. Do you want to do this? Yes, please.
We are not insensitive to people suffering from suicide. Anyway.
It was weird putting it out because it was like, what is this? Nobody knew. I mean, there were, like you said, there were a few, but it was like, what is it? What is podcasting? Now look, somebody just referenced a podcast on Scandal, the latest episode of Scandal about, some Ferguson thing, and she was like, oh, this guy, he's an activist and he has a blog and a podcast. And I was like, oh, there it is. Yeah.
It's mainstream.
It is. It's crazy.
Remember when the statistic, like, even after 2 years or something of doing the show, it was only like 13% of people even knew the word podcast, let alone listened to them. Right, so we were fighting an uphill battle the whole time.
I'm pretty sure that if it weren't for you guys, I would be part of the 87%. That did not.
You mean your phone doesn't get podcast?
Let me flip it open and find out.
His World War II backpack phone.
Pull up the antenna.
Turn the crank.
Whose mic is so loud?
I don't know. Probably Murd.
He's got a booming voice.
Yeah. Get this thing away from me.
No, you have your own
You have
mic.
to share it with
You have the most beautiful voice. That's why you get your own mic.
Oh, go on.
No, really, go on.
It's true. Show of applause. Who has the best voice on the show? Is it Murd? Come on, right?
It's a precious resource, apparently. I'm conserving it.
That's anticlimactic. Take a bow. Say thank you.
How far are you on Mohatmu now?
Galactus.
All right,
Nice.
so we're approaching it.
D through G.
Nice.
And what year are you in your reading?
Still 2002, I think. It's not getting better, folks.
How far were you behind when you started on the show?
I think it was only 7 years back then. Over the good old days. But it's one of the many far-reaching impacts of this beast called Comic Geek Speak. I've been introduced to so many great new things to read. I just want to buy them all and read them all, and I'm not finding any more time to do so than I had back in 2005. So the problem has just snowballed. But you know what? I have no regrets.
And no one to blame but yourself.
Yeah, also true.
Somebody want to talk about Golden Eagle? We're here in Golden Eagle.
Well, I think I can speak for at least myself and Peter and some other friend. Kevin was one of them. When we all met, it was the Golden Eagle at Berkshire in Wyomissing. And that's where we started to hang out. And I had a job where I could arrange to have off Wednesday afternoons. So I'd get there at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd be there to what, 5, 6, sometimes later at night.
Because basically it would happen in waves. Like, you'd be there, and then you'd be there for like an hour or two, and then somebody else would show up, and then we'd sit there and shoot the fat, and then next thing you know, Peter would show up, and there'd be another hour or two, and then somebody else would show up. Alex. And next thing you know, it's 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Dinner's gone by.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's gone up to pay a couple times. And that's how it started. We started hanging out there, chit-chatting, then at people's houses in their basements. And it just snowballed from there. The thing that we always did and still do, really, is talk like we would if we were hanging out. And that's how it always started, was a friendship.
Can you imagine if Lem had a sofa and some chairs there?
Oh, we'd have never left.
We talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about
that
storage
many
room.
a time with John at the Berkshire store because they had a lot of room there.
Yeah.
And we said, you should do
just put a couch there,
like Borders
table.
and places like that.
Yeah.
Put a couch, table, have some coffee, things of that nature. You know what I mean?
Get a refrigerator for some drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, it never happened.
No, but it was a great idea.
You have that now? You have that now, don't you, Chris?
Oh, in Wild Pig?
Yeah.
Yes, we have a full lounge, beverages, candy,
TV, Blu-ray.
couch, TV. A lot of that's all Bill's doing, of course. We have two
couches,
couches now.
two
That's right. We got a second couch. That's right.
Walkie
Thank you for reminding me,
table.
Billy.
Do you let customers use your restroom then, or is that entrapment?
No, they can use the restroom.
You say, is that entrapment?
Trapment.
You ever see that episode of Seinfeld where they took a book into
They got
bathroom?
flagged.
They got flagged?
Yes, madam. Even creepier in real life, you have a camera in the bathroom.
Just to make sure you don't take books back there.
That's not true, ladies and gentlemen.
Ouch.
Or is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep it
Hide in plain sight.
Is there some? Are we like breaking the laws of the universe by having an owner of a comic book store a guest inside of another comic book store?
No, Wild Pig
Are
and
we
Golden
crossing into the
No,
bleed
Wild
here?
Pig and Golden Eagle are allies. There's no...
But are you?
Absolutely.
There's no Civil War?
Look, I despise most other comic shops. So for me to say that, it's true.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
There's a reason the Simpsons comic guy exists. I mean, that stereotype is true in most cases. But not here.
That's always been the thing, right? In 10 years, like if you think about like the past 10 years of like we've so many people associate us with DCBS, and few of us were customers before we even did the podcast. I know Kevin was,
Yeah.
I was,
Brian was.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we just happened to talk about DCBS on episode 6, like just talking about it because we were like, there's this really cool service and da da da. Nobody ever believed that they were not. There was no exchange of anything for like years.
I wish
No.
there was.
Yeah, and then eventually there was, it became a whatever. But
Sponsor.
yeah, and then so it's always interesting to. I always wondered Chris's real thoughts about all that, and then coming on the show, and then because we used to get a lot of flack, right? We used to get a lot of flack about.
Oh, my God, we got a lot of
you're
flack.
killing the look. No, we're not.
Well, I mean, you think about it, right? I remember when we had episode 300 here, it was Lem told me very happily that it was his most successful day of business in the store's history.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So whether or not we buy our monthly books from DCBS, we still put a lot of money in Lem's pocket. Mm-hmm. We've helped Chris have successful sales that have put a lot of money in Chris's pocket. See, the thing is, people now drive through Reading. Maybe they're just going for something. They stop at Golden Eagle because they know about Golden Eagle. People coming through New Jersey, they stop at Wild Pig just because they're on their way somewhere else, and they're like, oh, I heard about this cool comic shop in New Jersey. So,
Well, periodically, people always stop in and identify themselves as CGS listeners. And to answer your previous query, Peter, I don't blame people one moment for going to DCB Service to buy their books because new comics are ridiculously overpriced. And why wouldn't you? That's why we do games and used stuff because you can't just rely on new comics. So I don't blame anybody for doing that. If I wasn't a retailer, I would be doing that because $4 for a comic book is stupid. So, I've never had any problem with that.
And now look, how many people are sponsored by DCB? We changed the market in 10 years.
I mean, they're running full cover ads now on major comic books.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So,
That was cool.
Yeah.
They announced in-stock trades on our show.
Oh, really? I don't remember that. Wow.
Yep.
That's a great site, too.
Just busting your ass. Anybody?
There's the first lull of the episode so far.
Well, if you want, I have those questions.
Well,
in the past where I'd have basically a question for everyone, I kind of revamped that. What I did was I essentially wrote them down on a index card, and then so we can get some listeners to participate, where you could draw a question and you could ask one of us specifically, and then answer it yourself to kind of get more than just us sitting here asking.
Well, here, let's do this first. What does anybody have anything that they in 10 years can't believe, or have you changed, or just anything like in the past 10 years? Doesn't even have to be about.
We're not talking weight gain, right?
Well, that's a given. I think we've all, except for Brian, we've all swelled. Well, Pants is lost, though, too.
Pants is...
I've lost, you jackass.
This is true. Credit where credit is due.
Well, first you swelled and then you shrank, right?
Yeah, I swelled pretty well.
It's winter. Hey, married with a kid now, so.
Yeah,
That's
Matt.
right. That's kind of
Matt is married, and Matt has a child. The guy
never
who
thought
swore
that
up
would
and
happen.
down he would never even go on a date.
Well, I looked at what our groupies were, and I figured I better, just get married.
Wow.
that's Matt at comicgeekspeak.com.
The ones that would approach me were men. Some of us have men. I know.
Oh, my God.
And there's been budding relationships because of our shows. I know. People proposing and getting married. That's right. Yeah.
As far as we know, we're the first show that first podcast to ever have a proposal on the air, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, TV's Mario. And just looking at all the tweets we've gotten today, how many other podcasts have either started directly or friendships that made podcasts come out of Comic Geek Speak?
like 6.
Dozens of them. Would you say 6?
Yeah.
That's a reasonable figure, I think.
I mean, many of them are an audience right now. Yeah, they can't hear a wave, Ian. And by the way, Ian, I'm sorry, there are no balloons. I forgot the balloons. I'm sorry.
You forgot the balloons.
I forgot the balloons.
He was promised balloons.
What happened to the manga?
Plural, balloons.
I was promised balloon.
I thought it was balloon. Well, all right.
All right, yeah. Either way, though. But while I'm up here, just straight up, I want to thank you guys in general for letting the community grow the way you have, and basically changing the scope of my friendships over the years. Because I didn't have a lot of people to talk to about comics when I was younger, and when I made the decision to get into the car of a guy I didn't know, hi Bruce, for episode 100, that changed the scope of my friendships and the scope of my comic book reading for the better. And I wouldn't know all you guys otherwise, and I wouldn't know anybody else in this room or anybody else on the internet or the forums. Yes, sucker. Thanks, Raph. Without that. So thank you, and I'm happy to have been to all of your freaking events over the years.
I think you're the one. Is that correct?
2.
Yeah.
Bruce.
All
Yeah.
right.
Bruce would be the other one. So straight up, thank you
now
guys
you have to
for
fight
that.
it out amongst yourselves.
Yeah, Kirk Spock type fighting to go on later tonight. Wait for that. Ouch. Thank you guys for that. 100%. No question about it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Ian
you as
Levinstein.
well, yep.
Pants, one thing I would say, 2 things. First, I think we should acknowledge what a magnificent job you've been doing, as whether you acknowledge yourself as the producer or not. You are the producer. You're doing a magnificent job, and I think everybody should acknowledge that and give you a round of applause.
Oh, stop.
Absolutely.
Here.
Oh, stop! Everybody stop your applause, please! Everybody stop your applause! Okay.
Jesus.
And the other
I
thing-
will
No, go ahead, sir,
second
go
that,
ahead.
Chris, because
He's already falling apart, ladies and gentlemen. He's already falling apart again.
as many of you know, and maybe some of you don't, and you're probably better off for it, Pants is insanely anal retentive. Well, that's another anal word. He's hell-bent on time and organization and making sure everything happens a certain way, which in your social life is super friggin' annoying, but as a producer of a podcast is the most valuable gift you could ever have, and so he does an incredible job. Everything is timely and organized, and also, as much as he would never love to admit it, he's a hell of an interviewer as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
Great radio voice.
Not that you should do something that you don't enjoy, but when you do it, you are very good at it, and you just need to know that. So,
Well, thank you, sir. I take that as a compliment. Thank you very much.
And who knew? You know what I mean?
While we're slapping each other on the ass,
Hey now!
Is that what that was?
yeah, of all of us here, at least right here at the table, Shane has been here, has not left the group and come back at all. He's the only one, Some people just sort of drift away. Matt comes in and out like a roach,
Can't deny that.
Yeah. And of the ones if people don't know, it was actually original 5, excuse me, and then it was 6.
Hey, I got invited.
We had to ask Mike Parkinson from Australia to draw you in the little characters. And it was 7, then it was 8. But Shane has also been around. He was been around.
3, right?
Number 3, episode 3. Yep. So, congratulations to Shane too.
It's a lot of fun, and it was escape for me. I mean, as much as I love kids and family and being at home, I like to get out with my friends. So I choose to be able to do it when we record. It's something I look forward to. I wouldn't get to see most of these guys. Life gets in the way. Everybody develops relationships, gets married, kids, moves away, jobs, whatever it is. But no matter what, I can still call these guys up and talk to them. We can still get together, and it's like yesterday. And if it's not here in front of the microphone, if it's in somebody's basement, it feels the same as it did 10 years ago.
And we need to clarify, because Chad brought this up. We were never, Chad Ciccone, we were never in an attic originally, or a basement.
No.
We were in, where were we at?
We were in my office on the first floor.
With windows.
With windows and everything. The only time we ever recorded in the basement was
One
that
night, 2
when
episodes.
2 episodes we recorded in Shane's, because we were in the process of moving to the new studio.
Yep.
We had actually moved to the new studio, but then the internet wasn't there or something, so we had
Correct.
to move back out into Shane's place temporarily.
Better story.
Ground level, my friend. Ground level. Priority 1.
Above ground.
We've had at least one where it was mobile in a vehicle. That's probably the closest we've gotten to confined area.
Even that's right on the ground
Yeah,
level,
that
too.
is true.
Yeah.
You know?
What was that one? I missed that one. What was that?
We
It was like a party
We did
bus?
that in Pittsburgh, driving around. That's when Ben was little.
Oh, so blame me.
I'm listening to this in the car afterward, and Ben's a baby in the back seat strapped. Well, a little bit older, because he could understand it. And all of a sudden, I completely forgot Matt said this. We're going along, and all of a sudden, Matt goes, "Left turn, my right nut." And Ben goes, "Wah!" and starts laughing. I'm like, "Oh my God, don't repeat that. Do not say that to Mom. You did not hear that." I tried to let it go, and he started laughing. "What's that?" I'm like, never mind. That's all right, laugh. You can laugh.
Now.
Yeah, now.
Well, now when I bring my 9-year-old to the studio, we have the bullshit button there. He just gleefully keeps pushing that over and over. So
Trying to get it to go, it doesn't work, and he hits it and hits it.
it's
Finally,
making precocious. It's fine.
Says the parent who let his 9-year-old watch The Godfather.
Well, I was introduced to The Godfather around the same age.
Oh, all right.
He was ready. We interpreted and explained.
Oh,
That
okay.
explains a lot, Ryan.
Anybody else 10 years?
One thing I would say as the newest cast member is that it's been a thrill for me. What's that?
Cast members sounds funny.
Yeah. It's a thrill for me because I was introduced to you guys in 2006. I think you've been doing it for about a year at that point. And Ryan, being the tech-savvy person that he is, had found the show and told me about it. So we decided to, connect with you guys to do promotion. And I so enjoyed going on the air with you, whatever interview we did this is many years ago at that time, that you couldn't get rid of me. I'd call in again, and we'd have other discussions and other interviews, and then we formed these close friendships, meeting at Pittsburgh and other shows and so forth. Then we started having the legendary parties where usually involved in humiliating me in some way, which is appropriate.
No, that's
Or
not
many
just the
ways.
parties. That's everywhere.
Yeah.
That's everywhere.
And correct. And then to move from that to actually participate in the show has been really a real honor for me, because obviously I've loved comic books since I was a child, and to find like-minded people of the same passion who can talk about it intelligently, it's just been, I can't thank you guys enough for being part of this. It's just a big thrill for me. So, honored to be here.
Actually, I think it was Pansai's idea to bring you in more, because then we stopped busting on him and we just moved on to you.
Deflection. It's classic technique.
I've fulfilled that role many times in my life, so I'm quite accustomed to it.
Eberly poetry reading. Awesome.
Some of those videos are on YouTube on our CGS account. If you haven't seen them, you really need to. Mert and Peter do dramatic reenactments of Chris Eberly poetry. It's priceless.
Well, the poetry's when I was 19 and didn't know any better. So, but it deserves to be lampooned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, at least you were invited on, unlike Pants, who just snuck in and never left.
Well, that was all your fault.
That was on to Heroes Con that one year.
Well, yeah, in 2006, I met you guys, some of you guys, at the New York Comic Con for the first time, including Peter. Saw you guys again in Chicago when I mentioned quite casually that, oh, yeah, I'm going to Heroes Con for the first time. And I think Peter said, oh, can I come along? And it's like, yeah, okay, Peter can come along. And we drove down, and we actually recorded, I think, in the car, and Peter did all kinds of recording down at the show. And I think he said at some point, hey, if you ever want to come on the show for whatever reason, that's fine. And he invited me on. I think the first one was a convention episode. Yeah. And then, I snuck around and weaseled my way in, and now you're stuck with me.
So you were picking him up? Is that what you're saying?
We crossed state lines, yes.
Well, then I created you by giving you the nickname Pants.
No, Matt, you created the nickname, I believe, actually.
Yeah, that's what he said. That's what I said.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
I created you.
Yeah, you did. Do you know when that was?
Was that 200?
Yeah, episode 200, yep.
My darkest day.
Yes.
It was in Brian's basement, so...
Oh, there goes the mic again.
Yeah, what were you playing, Bumper Pool?
Yeah, I was playing Bumper Pool with Jamie, and I was getting on Matt's nerves, as I usually do, wearing my Pants sweatshirt, and he goes, hey, Pants, and next thing you know, it's stuck.
The legend was born.
That's correct. Yeah, I got up to a halt again. I'm sorry about that.
Matt, you want to...
Sure, I can. So, I got questions written on here. Now, just a little kind of side thing in here. For the last couple of years, we've been doing various types of raffles and whatnot. We always have like a hat or a can, and I've been thinking of this idea, but I couldn't quite figure out how to work until recently. So I figured the show should have something that's reflection of us with a little bit of style.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
He makes me nervous.
Yeah, so he gets out a trash bag. That's
like a dead Gucci hooker.
All right. So what we do is, anytime we need a raffle.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's just brought out a pair of pants, and he's dumped all of the tickets.
What you have to do is, you stick your hands into one of the front pockets. Just to forewarn you, there are some pressure points in here, so you might get crossed up in like...
Oh, boy.
Oh, you can't hear it.
You can't hear it.
Here we go. Okay, so like...
That was insane.
And...
That was James Brown doing Hot Pants, by the way.
You're the only one there. Usually the only one
You ever
here.
saw Anchorman,
Pants
the Pants
Party.
Party line?
Wow.
It's great for podcasting.
Yeah.
Matt,
Works great on the radio.
You never cease to amaze me with your resourcefulness and creativity.
Who wants to come up
Somebody has
first?
plenty of free time
Grab
on his
the
hands.
pants, stick their hands in.
Come on, Eric.
Stick your hands in the
Stick your
pants.
hand in the pants.
There's some sanitizer to the left.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Sure.
Identify yourself, citizen.
Howdy, my name is Eric Johnson from Philadelphia. I've been listening since probably, I think, like episode 95 or, before 100. And real quick, just say thank you to all you guys. I work I work at night, and you guys are. I'm always listening to you guys in my ears. I probably would kill somebody if I didn't. At least something interesting to listen to. I work with a bunch of apes, so. And if any of my coworkers are listening, I didn't mean that. Let's see. What TV series or comic book cartoon series do you wish would return with the original cast?
Well, I'll take the one first because my wish is being granted because Twin Peaks is coming back in 2016 with the original cast. At least those were still alive, so my wish will be granted in that case.
What would be your answer before you go? You have to answer it too.
Oh, I have to answer it too?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are rules to this crazy game Matt designed.
As you can see, they're being made up as it goes.
I'll probably get a lot of flack, but I really love nostalgia. Things that make me feel like I was a kid. And one of my favorite cartoon series that when I was a kid, it's terrible now. I would never let my son watch it because it's like horrendous. But the Dungeons and Dragons Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, of course.
What's horrendous about that?
It doesn't stand up to my memory.
It's got Willie Ames in it.
I waited like 25 or 30 years to watch it again, and I watched it. I was like, what did I like about that? It was horrible. But I would say that would probably be like the ultimate nostalgia for me to just watch that with a bowl of cereal and my footy pajamas.
Totally watching that now.
Holds up for me.
I'd like to see Mask come back. The Mobile Armored Strike Command Mask with Venom.
Of course he would.
All these great 80s properties, and nothing ever happens with Mask. But, yeah, I'd love to have that come back.
Adam, you've got to have something.
I've always wanted to see a Taxi reunion show, but of course we've already lost Latka Gravis. Now you had Andy Kaufman, and yeah, still waiting for him to pull the punchline on that one. Yeah,
Well done.
And we've also lost Bobby Wheeler, so Jeff Conaway. So that's not going to be possible. So I guess following Shane's lead, I guess I'd say if we're talking 80s toy properties to be revived, Visionaries.
Wow.
Wouldn't even need to be the original cast. I just want somebody to do something with that. A comic, an animated series, I don't even care what. Knights of the Magical Light. I'm probably the only one in this room who remembers it.
I had this issue number 1 by Star Comics.
From Star Comics, yeah.
I did.
Anyone else want to come up?
I'd like to see a Dark Crystal sequel.
Oh, yeah.
Aren't they working on something like that?
Maybe, but we'll
Supposedly.
see. I'll believe it
Why
when I
do
see
they
it.
work?
I thought so.
Put your hand in the pan.
How long did it take you to make that?
He's feeling around.
Well, I'm going to seize the mic for a second and do a testimonial like Ian did. I'm here partially
Speak
on
in
my
front
own
of the mic,
behalf,
then, please.
and partially on behalf of
And
Action
who
Lab
are you
Comics.
again, sir?
I'm Chad Ciccone. And CGS has had not only a personal effect on my life, but sort of is partially responsible for the creation of Action Lab as well. I have a day job, but I'm a comic artist, and my first published work was because of the CGS forums. I hooked up with Blue Meanie from the UK on the CGS forums, who was the writer on my first project, and CGS was how I met him. And Action Lab, all the original founders of Action Lab met each other originally through the CGS forums and the various events and things. So you were talking about effects you guys have had on the industry. Action Lab exists in large measure due to relationships formed as a result of Comic Geek Speak. So thank you on behalf of Action Lab and on behalf of myself as well.
When are we getting Action Lab coats?
I'll run it up the flagpole.
I've done it for years. We need Action Lab coats. Come on, it writes itself. It likes to print money.
I'll take that under advisement.
Go ahead.
I'm not entirely sure what this means. It says, ask Brian a question.
So ask Brian whatever question you want.
Oh, jeez. Brian.
Is it a Y or I?
It's a Y.
Well, take us back to the very, very beginning. If this thing was your idea, and if so, what was the original genesis of the idea? What caused you to want to do this in the first place?
All right, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again.
Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who luckily haven't gone back and listened to the old episodes.
going to post it right now.
I read an article in Wired magazine. It had Adam Curry on the front cover talking about podcasting. I think the issue was probably the February of 2005 issue, which meant I got it in January or whatever, right? And I knew Adam Curry from Headbangers Ball back in the MTV days, right? And he was like a pirate radio DJ in the Netherlands when he was like 14 years old, and that's how he got famous and became a DJ in New York for like Q102 and then went on to MTV and stuff. So he has a history of broadcasting and knows about this stuff. So he's also a tech guy. He had in 2000 he had invested a lot of money in tech companies and stuff, and so he knows quite a bit about technology. So he found out about this idea of using RSS feed with audio, and then because he's a tech guy and a broadcaster, he took that idea, recorded some audio, and coined the term podcasting because you listen to it on an iPod. And so then and that basically the first podcast ever was I think like October of 2004, somewhere in that time frame. So I was reading this article, I'm like, I want to try this because I'm a tech nerd and I like to play around with stuff. I got to do this. And I was like, well, I don't know enough about anything to actually talk about anything in a meaningful way except maybe comic books. So maybe I should talk about that. So immediately I sent an email to Peter because I'm like, I don't have enough on my own, so who knows way more about comics than I do is Peter.
Did you listen to any podcasts before you
Nope.
decided to do one yourself?
Nope, didn't listen to a single nothing. I mean, that's maybe not true. I probably listened to a couple of Adam Curry shows and said, yeah, I want to try this. So I bought the crappiest microphone from Radio Shack.
I think it's that one over there.
Yeah, it's the one I'm using.
And Peter came over, and with like only a few notes, we talked for 15 minutes on that first episode, and then talked for another 20 minutes for the second episode, and that was the beginning. There was really no other thought or effort put into it other than that. Like,
it's like Stan Lee telling the origin of Spider-Man.
And then it was magic.
Yeah, basically. So it is very much like the Stan Lee story, right? I just had the idea, and then I let Jack Kirby do all the work.
No, that's not true, because you had the Stump the Rios things.
From episode one. Yeah.
And you actually were more of like, quote unquote, the producer for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ideas and things like that. I remember I was listening to one of the things I dropped the ball on before this 10th anniversary I was supposed to put out clip shows, like year 1, year 2, year 3, and I'm actually working on it. We'll get it sometime.
By year 11 or so.
Yeah.
Like Crusaders episode 6.
So there's one episode, maybe like in the 30s or 20s or something like that. Brian's like, okay, we got to do the great announcement. We were downloading maybe 10 downloads, 20. We got 100 downloads on one episode, and we were like, "Oh, that's so great! We're making our way." Early on, and now, I don't know what they are now, but that was pretty crazy when you think about like post. I guess that was might have been pre iTunes putting podcasts up.
Yeah, because iTunes started podcasts in June of that year.
So it was like more like just word of mouth and just spreading it around. Yeah.
I know a lot of it came from people just Googling comic books or comic book information, and podcasts started to pop up.
Yeah, it's still how a lot of people find us. They just pop in comic book podcast, and there we are.
Are we the oldest comic podcast? Or no?
That's still going on? Possibly.
Yeah. Well, Los Comic Geekos wasn't they right
They
around?
started right around us, and they're still going strong down in El Salvador.
Comics Library.
Neil Gorman Comixology.
Yeah, but he stopped a long time ago.
That's right.
So he was doing it a few months, like about a month or so before we were, but he stopped kind of a couple months after we started. He never.
Augie DeBleek was like one of the earliest in like January. In fact, maybe January 1st, like a specific comic podcast. Because I know Mur Lafferty was doing some comic talk, but it wasn't like a comic specific show. There was the Meanwhile podcast, and a lot of those pod faded. But when did Chris Marshall do his? Was it before? I think it was before. Might have been.
I don't remember. I think it was also March, but I don't remember.
Yeah, she's still around. Mur Lafferty's still around, yeah. Bruce, you have any recollections on that? Come to Mike. Bruce Rosenberger.
Who was, I believe, the first in-studio guest of
was.
Comic Geek Speak back in the old days.
And along with Ian, our other Comic Geek Speak event, Iron Man.
The first one I can remember was called Comic Geeks, and I can't remember who the host was.
We killed them and took their money.
And then this was the second one I found. This was the second comic book podcast that I found. So I think I started listening at like 9 or 10. So those are the only ones I know of before. I mean, but yeah, you guys were very early on. You know, I discovered them in December 2004, and you were what, February?
March.
Yeah. So.
That's why we're here today, March 7th.
10th anniversary. You know.
Oh, is that what we're doing here?
Sorry. I had to do that. Stay there, Bruce. Stay there. So, because you just, how did you find the show again? Because I'm curious about that question of like, how did people find the show prior to
Turn
iTunes?
about the Greenland.
Yeah.
It was that was before iTunes was out. And I can't even remember how I found them. But there must have been websites or something that had different shows listed.
Yeah.
And,
I seem to vaguely recall like some sort of directory or something very early on that somebody just made.
Podcast Alley.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably what it was. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I found the show. You know, I'd been jonesing to do one for a while, but
and you did.
Well, eventually, yeah. You know, you guys helped inspire me. You know, I actually had a couple friends that were comic fans, and I said, "Hey, let's do one of these podcast things." And they both looked at me and said, "Why?" Never. There's one of them, yeah.
Exactly.
It's a brutal room.
How are your comics going and all that?
Podcasts?
No, your comics too.
Oh, the comics. I'm working on number 9 now. I got the script and our
number
space,
9 of
Dutchy Digest. I'm sorry.
I love that title.
Yep,
And
it's one of my favorites.
The con that we go to is normally in early April. The hotel that it's held in suddenly shut down, which isn't a big surprise because it was getting kind of run down anyway. But it had to be rescheduled till July, so I have lots of time to take my time. I usually do it at the very last moment. You know, that's kind of the way I do things. You know, so we're getting
Steve's horrified by that thought.
there. No, he's learned over 10 years. He's learned that I do everything at the last minute. So you know, that's what it is.
So you're drawing about the pace of Jim Lee. You're drawing about the same pace as Jim Lee.
I would say more
yeah.
Art Adams.
Yeah. I wish we could get one full comic from Art Adams a year.
It's coming. It's coming. Isn't that Guardians team up?
Yeah. And we got one issue, right? Yeah.
Just what you wanted. There you go.
Play back his hate.
Let's start with one issue and see what happens.
But hey, guys, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Pick a question.
Do you want to pick a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Put your hand in the pants.
Woo! I used to call Bruce the Dean of Comics Podcasting.
That's because.
Because why? Digging in the wrong hole?
Ow!
Way too many.
Damn.
All right. A moustache, Brian moustache, thick moustache, my moustache, your moustache. Say the word moustache.
What?
It's from. He's quoting from A Million Ways to Die in the West. He had to be there.
For mustache.
Yeah, I think you might have spelled that wrong.
No.
That's
Is it?
Well, there's 2 different ways to spell it. I agree with Matt. I prefer M-O-U-S.
A mustache. Big mustache, thick mustache, my mustache, your mustache. Say the word mustache.
Mustache.
Mustache. Now we both have said mustache.
We should have pre-screened these.
Unless you're one of
There's an opening on the show if anyone's interested.
Yeah,
That's why we call
that'll
them
be the
80.
disclaimer.
That's a 20 part of the 80-20, right?
Yeah.
I forgot about the 80-20.
When they get worse. Who's next?
Be a little less
Righty or
enthusiastic.
lefty?
Pocket, any
Huh?
pocket.
Huh?
want to point out, by the way, I've never actually officially been on the show as a guest. In all this time.
Failed.
Pants, you producer, you failed.
Maybe we were trying to tell you something.
And I haven't gotten the hint yet. All right. In Carrie Underwood's Before He Cheats, she...
Just let it go.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks a lot. She beats the shit out of her boyfriend's truck based on a probably. Doesn't that song put her boyfriend as the good guy?
Yes, it does.
Does this win an argument with Megan? I'm wondering.
Where are those David D. Stump questions?
I think.
Did you really?
I think I may have.
Now would be perfect for awkward.
An officer, that was the moment when it went off the rails.
Matt, is this like some bizarre self-promotion for yourself?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's like his way to kind of just work out his demons.
It's so brilliant.
Who has somebody just come up and ask us a question that you want to know the answer to?
Jesus. I'm going to find a question.
All right, so I guess it's testimonial time too, because I think I thought about it long.
And you again
here.
are?
Oh, my name is Raph. I don't need the rest of my name because I never use it. But anyway, so you guys were, I think, at around episode 185 when I started listening. And I was in college, and I had long breaks at my college, and I needed something to do. So I just got an iPod, and people told me about podcasts. So I found you guys. And really, I started meeting everyone in the community in New York. And then some people mentioned that they were coming down for a show. I said, sure, let's do that. I want to meet more people like me that love comics. I really want to get into this. And now, as you all have known over the years, I am a bit of a maniac. And I'm really passionate about comics. And you guys gave me the forum to express that and deal with it. First off, thank you for dealing with it and not just be like, okay, no. And over the years, I've made a lot of friends in this room, and I've gotten to express my opinions. I've gotten to see new things. Honestly, I just left Midtown Comics. I was there for 6 years. I was the floor manager there for 2 years. Everyone relied on me for information. I feel like you guys were a big part of that by talking about books that no one else was talking about, by reviewing things, by mentioning things you like. You guys are all. You're such a large group. You have such different tastes, and that really helped me. It helped me open my mind up. I was just really big too when I started out, so that definitely helped me become the floor manager of Midtown Comics, and I've always been appreciative of that. And now in my new job, working for who I work for, I don't know if I should really say all of that.
Monopoly?
Then leave it go.
Monopoly?
A certain comic distributor.
That has a monopoly?
I sell toys. I don't do anything with comics, so don't get angry at me. But I think that's due to my job at Midtown, and my job at Midtown is due to you and everyone else here. So thank you guys. You guys have been a big support in my life, and this is a real community, and I love it, and I love being a part of it. And it's important enough to me that I came down to my 31st birthday, and I wasn't going to mention it, but there it is.
Thanks for not mentioning it.
So speaking of that, so this is my question actually. Where did you guys think you were going to be 10 years ago? 10 years ago, 10 years from now, 10 years ago. So where did you think you'd be today, 10 years ago? And what do you think will happen 10 years from now? And for me personally, I didn't think I'd be 31 because this is unreal. I don't get old. I'm immortal or whatever, right? I don't do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my question: is where did you think you'd be 10 years ago, and where do you think you'll be 10 years from now?
He just wants to see a bunch of grown men cry.
Yeah. Let's all get emotional and stuff. Why not? Totally.
Well, I certainly didn't think we'd be still podcasting 10 years ago.
No, not at all.
I don't think that ever even occurred to us.
You didn't really have an idea how long you'd go with it?
No, I didn't know. We just screwed around, right?
Until people stopped listening.
The fact that it even went a year seemed like, wow, we did this for a whole year,
Yeah. Is this when we announce this is the last episode?
Click.
God, I hope not. We have sponsors that we owe episodes to.
I'm pretty much in the same place. I was married at that time. I was having kids and having a family. Like Brian said, I didn't think we'd be doing this 10 years from now. If we do it 10 years from now, that's great. I really am amazed at not only the friendships we've made, the places we've gone. Not me so much because I don't fly, and just that we still get together and do this. I mean, it's how I see my friends, my closest friends that are not only close at home but close to my heart from everything we've done over the years. I mean, these are the guys I started out with, and as I had people to talk to throughout my life with comics, but not like these guys. This was something even better when I started meeting Peter and Kevin and started hanging out, and then met Brian and everybody else came in. Although, Matt, you came to the house and then we dissed you for a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
I showed you that Star Wars Christmas.
That's
special.
right. And we thought, man, forget that. But yeah, I'm me personally, I'm in the same place I thought I would be, but I never thought we'd still be doing this, and it's great.
For me, it's since we all love comics so passionately, as long as they're actually printing comics in some form, whether it's paper or whatever else they decide to do down the road, as far as we're concerned, we should keep talking until we drop, basically. So, and you introduced me to the Christmas, the Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah.
You weren't moved by Jefferson Starship and Art
I had
Carney?
already seen it. I thought it was about a half hour, not 2 hours long. Once it hit the hour mark, it was getting a little bit old.
No. Jefferson Starship is on the Star Wars Holiday Special?
Oh, yes. Yes.
I haven't seen it.
They
no.
give a holographic concert in it.
I haven't gotten any further than B. Arthur, I don't think. I have Red Octopus on the CD player in my car right now. I need to see this special.
I have a
CD player.
Murd, I'll lend you my copy.
I would like to borrow it. So,
and you can keep it for a long, long time if you like to.
Okay, and if I like it as much as I'm expecting to, 10 years from now, I'll still be watching it every Christmas. All right. So 10 years ago, I probably wasn't thinking that far ahead, to be honest. I probably expected I'd be caught up as far as 5 years behind in my comics reading. I didn't think that I'd be sitting here in the midst of a group of good friends and fellow scholars of the comic medium, still having meaningful discussions about said medium, 10 years hence and with no end in sight. 10 years from now, I hope, there's no guaranteeing the podcast will necessarily hold together that long, but if it does, and we all hope that it does, hopefully the discussions will be as good as they are now and the friendships will be as strong as they are now. And I'll probably be 17 years behind by then. As far as my personal life, I'm not even going to make any guesses without suicidally depressing myself.
Wow. Way to bring down the room, Bird.
Not to worry, we're all happy now. That's what matters.
You have 10 years to spiral down. That's why I take my time.
Let's hear from Kevin. We haven't heard from Kevin for a while.
I how can I say it any different than what's already been said as far as I don't think any of us went into this thinking that or had any notion where it would go. You know what I mean? I mean, I know personally, and obviously everybody's been reflecting the same thing. We just did it because we wanted to do it. We were just doing something together as friends. There was no intention that, we want to sell merchandise. We want to, it was nothing like that, And I don't think it really even. I don't even think it really hit home. For me, it was. Obviously, when we started to talk to people, I remember Maury Hollowell talking to him in the first months. And he would talk to me and he'd say, like, you just don't understand how many professionals are listening to your show. And I'm like, you're off your rocker. You know what I mean? It's like there's no way. And again, because it really was no intent to that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. They sit at a desk doing work, or whatever, and they want something in the background. And other than music, this is something that's relatable, and obviously they're interested in. So it's like you provide that environment of sitting at a table, talking with friends, and hanging out. And it just doesn't – you can't comprehend something like that, obviously, when you had no intent to do so. But then when we started getting – creators on, to interview, like Joe Kubert and, people, Gene Colan, what I mean? It still was kind of surreal. But then I think, if I'm not mistaken, the end of, in 2005, in December, or at the end of that year, isn't that when we had Stan Lee on? Wasn't that like at...
Yeah, probably something like that, yeah.
You know what I mean? So you think about it, and within, 8 months, we end up with a guest like Stan Lee. You know what I mean? It's surreal. There is no way to, and I don't even think if you had a notion at the time to put some sort of intention to it, you would even fathom it is what it is. And I give as much credit to the listeners as I do the other people on the show, because if it wasn't for the community that is out there and the forum that we have, because originally that forum was ours. Yeah. That was only a personal forum that Brian set up for us to just talk to each other on the internet, because all the other forums at that time, there were so many assholes, that just wanted to, troll and...
At that time?
Well, in its infancy, when there was only a certain amount of forums, and it seemed like any forum you went on to, if you voiced your opinion or had something, you got flamed. You know what I mean? It was not a very inviting and welcoming venue. So Brian intentionally started that for us so that we could discuss comics, talk to each other, and do things like that, and invite people in, that we can create an environment that wasn't, in a sense, hostile. And obviously, when the show started, it was just kind of a natural progression to open it up to the listeners. And it just became an entity of its own. I know if you go back through the episodes, I've said it numerous times, but it is the truest for me is that you guys deserve as much credit for the longevity of the show and for everything that has transpired. I mean, as far as your own podcast, creating, publishing comics, doing whatever you do, it's cool to hear that kind of, you were part of that, even though we don't feel directly you're part of that. It's you guys created that forum on your own. You know what I mean? You were respectful to each other. You were open to each other, and that's what created that environment. Without that environment, this wouldn't be here. You guys wouldn't be coming down here, traveling to come to a show, things of that nature. It's an entity of its own. So it's a show of natural creation, and it's just a natural extension of what we did. We were friends talking about comics, and that's what it still is. Friends talking and making more friends. So no, I never expected that. I mean, I never even when it started getting more popular and started, generating the recognition, I never still, thought it would be what it ever, came to. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for you guys, and appreciate yourselves as well as what you do appreciate already. So I thank you guys as well. So.
I can remember, like Brian said, we were happy if there was 100 people downloading stuff, and then it got to episode 100, and we were going to have something here, and we're like, well, we'd be happy if maybe 10 people showed up, and all the rest of the people showed up. I mean, it's just been incredible, the friendships we've made, the way it did take off, and the connections we've made all around the world, not just local here at different conventions, literally all around the world.
Well, that blows my mind, is that people, especially in episode 100, people flew here from other countries to come to our episode 100. I mean, I don't care who you are, whether you're in podcasting or not. You don't think something like that's going to happen. You know what I mean? To me, I sit there and look at it, and granted, it blows my mind in a positive way, but I sit there and go like, why? Why? You take your time and your money, and that's what you choose, So I don't look at it, and I don't take it for granted, and I don't think anybody else does either. But it still blows my mind that it happens, because when I hear that, it's just I myself, I don't think I do that. I don't know. I mean, I've gone to cons, and that's it. I guess I can assimilate it to that, but that still blows my mind. So
that was we haven't really mentioned him too much yet, but when Jamie passed, and all the things were coming in, all the notes and all the emails and the Facebook messages and the Twitter, and it just came from everywhere.
It was a flood.
That I think was the first time it really hit me, the scope, which is weird, right? Because, you think about everything you just said. You can go all these places. Like, I went to Puerto Rico for a convention and spent a week there by myself, and there were people there that had listened to the show and took me around and, went to some little, food cart in the middle of San Juan. It was just great, And even there you could find somebody, and either whether it's across country, like, or in London, or just there's people everywhere, Australia. So you would think it would have registered, because those are the best parts of podcasting.
I mean, you kind of, in a sense, almost you're caught in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, we didn't set no intention to become celebrities or anything like that. And I'm not saying we are. No, we're not more popular than Jesus. Or, it's something that you just, you just don't put thought to, because we didn't have the intention for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when something like that happens, it does. It blows your mind.
Yeah. You're standing at a convention going through books and talking to somebody, and then somebody else says, "Oh, I know your voice."
Yeah.
Or Punkage here, a friend from Philly. I'm standing talking to, I think, Charlito on the street, and he's walking by because him and his girl are just hanging out at a restaurant, and then he comes back, and I'm like, "Why is he coming back to me?" And he's like, "I know your voice," and sure enough, that was weird. So yeah, you're right. You're in it. It's the best part of podcasting: community, sharing ideas, being positive about things, and then, like I said, when everything went down with Jamie, it was like that's when it really, just the real scope of it was so powerful. Like that really hit me. How other people were touched and how supportive they were, and like everybody who came out for the race, and that was just amazing. That was just
The other thing I think of all the stuff that we've done over 10 years.
Each other?
Well, a lot of hotel room time.
Where are those hotel rooms?
Those big beds are very accommodating. You know what I'm talking about, Billy. Well, not only have we done 2,000 podcasts, but magazines, run conventions. Pants and Murd and I are about to get on planes in a couple days to go to London to run the largest comic convention in the United Kingdom. Like, that's kind of crazy, right? And all of that stuff spun out of us sitting around and having too much time in cars and hotel rooms for our minds to wander and go, what if? Oh. Usually it's me having cockamamie ideas and then through sheer force of will making them happen because I don't know how to stop. Like my brain is like a shark, right? If it stops, it'll die. Right? And that's just I can't imagine any of that stuff. When we sat down at the mics 10 years ago, we certainly didn't think we'd be running conventions and stuff.
Or work in the industry. I never would have imagined that to be able to actually work in the industry, to whatever level or whatever, who, again, you sit there and you're doing a podcast. What is that, But it's the connections. It's all the connections. Yeah. It's like a huge network.
It's a huge, small world.
Yep.
It really is. Yeah. You guys out there, somebody out there want to come up? Yeah, do it.
JP.
And then you have to put your hand in pants.
I'm
going to skip that part.
No, I'm
I'm James or JP or Professor P. I have like multiple names on the forums I used, and
DID, huh?
Yeah, I'm lucky to have been on the podcast a few times and gotten to know a number of you.
He's looking at you with a dagger eyes right now behind you. He's the skunk guy right there.
Sorry about that.
He lives in Lancaster.
Yeah. I mean, so I was listening since 2008. It's funny because I was actually living in New York City when I discovered this through another website, and I was like, oh my God, these people from Golden Eagle area, and I used to go to Golden Eagle, and I saw some of you guys there, I remember, and I remember buying comic books from Jamie, so now I'm back in Lancaster, but congratulations, thank you so much, just like the other people. I listen to it all the time, and I know you put, to me now that I have a family and older, time is so important, and all the time you put into it is value to us, the listeners, because it helps me get through hard times and struggles, and if there's people on this panel that I've reached out to ask questions, and they took their own time to answer them, and I appreciate it a lot. And thank you again for letting me be on the show. It was a pleasure the 3 or 4 times I've been on. And my question is, what were not me, but what were your favorite guests on the show that you had, if you had to pick one? It could be a person in this audience, it could be a famous creator, and just kind of go with that. Thank you again.
That's Gene Colan. That was I think my favorite interview.
I would say my favorite guest, hands down, is Uncle Sal. I love that man.
Jack off.
I remember before I came on the show, I couldn't wait for the first time I was going to be on an Uncle Sal episode. And we're in Brian's house at that time when his kids are very young. And he says, "Now they're asleep. Don't." And I'm cackling like a hound all the time. And Uncle Sal was like, "Keep it down, keep it down." So we got to the studio. Finally, I get to laugh literally on the floor sometimes with Uncle Sal. He's a great guest. He's been very generous with his time, with other things with us. He loves talking to people just people in general. And when we mention the show, he just brightens up. So he's the guy. I just love Uncle Sal to death. He's just fantastic.
Since you mentioned Uncle Sal, I have to say Cousin Buzz. It's been a while since we had him on, but he was good too.
Yeah, those two guys I think of less as guests than as like family members.
Yeah.
Let's see. Picking a guest, though, like a one-time and off guest, Jim Lee. I mean, opinions divided about the quality of his artwork, but he's a very intelligent man, very personable, and he remembered my name. Surprisingly,
at the end.
Near the end, he was like, "Adam, did you want to ask me a question?" And that's that meant something to me. So, sure. Jim Lee.
I loved and a lot of it was for Jamie's doing too. I loved when we had Terry Moore on. I loved going through all of Strangers of Paradise. That was, since you mentioned Gene and Sal and Buzz, that would be my next, was all that stuff we did with Terry.
And from a purely historical and like educational purpose for the world of comics, I think the episodes that we did with Dave Sim are important for comics history, because I think anybody who reads Cerebus or is in, college learning about comics and wants to know the craft better, they should listen to those 3 episodes, because there is a ton of good creator input and lessons to be learned from those episodes. I mean, separate the art from the artist and all that. Dave Sim is an incredibly good comic creator, and there's plenty to learn from him.
I think for me, this one I was a listener, not a member of the show, but when you guys interviewed Jerry Conway, which was in the 700s, I think, and he just had an interview with him in Alter Ego, the latest issue. He was so generous with his time, and you guys asked him a lot of great questions about his entire career. He's such an important, especially an important Bronze Age writer, and he got a great comprehensive overview of really his whole career in that interview. And he's one of the most important comic writers, I think, certainly from the Bronze Age. So that was a great interview. And also, I think he did Sal Buscema right after that one. That was also an excellent. Any kind of time you get people who are so important to the medium, maybe they're near the end of their career or they're a lot older, to get them on there while they're still around to give. That's why Gene Colan was so important, for example. That Gene Colan interview was tremendous. I still listen to that once in a while. So the show has done magnificent work in terms of just chronicling the work and the words of various creators. So
I have to say, it's a tough decision for me. It's between Gene Colan and Joe Kubert. I think for me, Joe Kubert was somebody that obviously I was aware of, and I knew of the college, and I knew of his impact on comics. I never really put a lot of focus on it, though. But after speaking with him, it kind of really, kind of moved me as to the person he was and how forthcoming he was to this. It's just somebody I just never really put a lot of focus into. But Gene, for me, was somebody obviously who I admired, and learned to grow and love as a artist. And I think the only reason that edges out for me is because of, after the interview, how many interactions we and I have had with him, of how sweet of a human being he was outside of being an extremely talented artist. And it was a deadly shame to lose someone that way and so tragically and such. But I have to say he's probably my favorite guest that I feel. Sorry to bring the show down.
Oh, Drunk Captain. Yeah, okay, come on. It's crazy. It's a hard question because there's so many ways you can go with it. Like, yeah. I loved personally anytime Jeff Clock would come on the show just to watch Brian's expressions during the interview. Just listening to him talk, because he was just an interesting voice, I also loved other podcasters. No, I'm not trying to rub this in, Ian. I'm not trying to rub it in, but like Charlito, Mr. Phil, and Sean Whalen, Jim. The Uncanny X-Cast guy. Like just people that would come on the show just to offer their expertise, or because then it really became sort of like we could just shoot the shit with people that sort of understood podcasting and were just trying to make some interesting points. And but I also really liked the people that we just sort of fell upon, or maybe their work fell in our laps, and we didn't realize where they were going to go. Like I remember, Mike Norton for one, because he reached out to us in an email. Jamal. He actually tweeted a very lovely tweet to us too, Jamal Igo. And like Dave Wachter was on the forums, but I remember getting an email from Jonathan Hickman, who's now writing, the biggest Marvel event, right, in their history right now. So it was just this random email that he sent to a bunch of people, and it was personal, but it was still, you could tell it was something he was sending out. I'm doing this book. It's called Nightly News from Image. Here's a free PDF if you want to read it. And like just read it and was like, oh my God, this is so good. It's so different. It's such an interesting voice. And then, or think about like stumbling on Dave Peterson and Malscar, and again, not people that listened to the show, but that we just were at a convention and saw, and then all of a sudden they just took off. That was cool. Or like learning that Tony Moore, he said his first podcast interview was CGS, right?
Yep.
Post Walking Dead, right? Yeah. That was crazy. Nowadays, podcasts they're scrambling to go after every hot person, but I didn't realize that when he said that, when he was here for Super Show, that we were the first podcast he was on. That was crazy to think. But those guests, and there's been a bunch of them that I can't remember, they just reached out and we said, yes, let's take a chance, let's interview them. And now they're doing, or finding people at conventions, that's been a great thing. I appreciated that. Anyone? Next. Somebody want to stick their hand in pants? There's some good questions in there. Yeah, go ahead.
They've been vetted.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's Harold.
Can it get worse?
Hey, guys. It's Harold Jeanette. I never did that to myself. So before I get the question, I just want to thank you guys because if it wasn't for you guys, I never would have started drawing again. I was an art major growing up in high school, and I kind of gave up. And going on, it was the interviews. The interviews you guys did at the comic conventions, you would interview indie guys. And it made me realize I can do this. You don't need to be at Marvel or DC to do your own comic book. And you guys had the super shows, and I got to have it. You were so kind to let me have a table there. And it made that happen because of you guys. So I want to thank you for that.
Into the abyss.
Into the pocket.
That should be one of the ones. Oh, I got a bunch.
Then pick the best one.
Yeah. Now Pete vetted these, so if there's an issue, you'll be okay.
How many formulas do you think Hershey's went through before they got M&Ms to melt in your mouth and not in your hand?
That was vetted?
I like that.
3. Finger's the one. I left it as a goof, and then it was just.
Sorry, Harold.
Let's try that again.
Give me those pants.
Yeah, that's motivation.
Oops, sorry.
Actually, I did have a question for all of you, but I'm Chris Calloway from Wilmington, Delaware. Pants, I met you in Baltimore Comic Con.
Oh, you look familiar.
Yeah. What was the first comic that you read that really left an impression on you? The first one you can remember, because I know the first one that I read was read to me. I was 5. It was Journey into Mystery. It was actually a reprint book in Marvel Tales, where Thor fights the Hulk, that Jack Kirby, Stan Lee.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I've never forgotten that. And my daughter, who's here with me, she said, "Dad, I want to take a picture of you. I'm in photography school. I want to take your portrait." I said, "Oh, I'll put a suit on." She goes, "No, in your natural environment, reading a comic, drinking a beer." And that was the comic I pulled out. I read that one. So that left a big impression on me. I can remember where I read it, how old I was, mom reading it to me. What was the first book that you read? Do you remember where you were when you read it or being read to you?
I'll start. One of the first ones that I can remember back in the 70s was, I believe it was Flash 275. It was the issue where, Iris Allen, spoilers, dies. I remember
oh my God, you just ruined it for everybody watching the TV show. You realize that.
Well, now Murd doesn't have to read that one.
Come on, it's like 40,
take that one out of the pile.
It's like 40 years old or whatever.
There's a whole new audience with Flash.
But anyway, I just remember that distinctive cover with it's a masquerade party. There's all kinds of superheroes there, Bizarro's on the cover, and it just stuck with me. I don't remember where I got it, but one of the first things I can remember reading was Flash 275. Next.
Okay. Christmas morning, either 1983 or 1984, I found in my stocking a collected edition of Marvel's Return of the Jedi comics adaptation, all 4 issues. Because this was long before I started reading comics regularly. It may even have been the first comic I ever owned. I'm really not clear on that point. But I very clearly remember the panel where Luke is examining his damaged cyborg hand. And I remember the panel of Leia strangling Jabba the Hutt, his tongue lolling out of his mouth. And that you could say that made an impression. Yeah, so it would be a long time before comics really permanently took hold on me. But that was when, I guess you could say, the first infection took place.
It's a hard question. I have to probably the Judas Contract storyline in New Teen Titans, because I've been reading prior to that, and I still have the first issue all beat up and all that. New Teen Titans 28, but that 3 issues leading into the annual, that was because it was serious, and I think that was the one that kind of really hit home in that terms of it's not just about superhero battles, and it's not just about whatever. It's actually affecting their lives, and so I think that one would be for me.
I'm gonna say probably the first issue I've ever had, Amazing 251. It has a picture of Spider-Man's arm or hand coming up out of the river, and he's holding the Hobgoblin's mask. That was at the time you could still get the mail order subscriptions, and my mom got me one to Web and Spectacular and Amazing, and I think that was the first one that came in. And I remember around that time I couldn't quite read, so it kind of got me in a habit even today where I'll page through everything and then I'll go back and read it. So I remember I used to have this kind of ritual where I'd get it, I'd open it up and page through it and kind of just like run around it and then come back and turn the page and run around again. But I still have that first issue, and it's beat to shit, and if I had to get rid of everything, that would be the only issue that I would keep. But that kind of just... I was already watching the Amazing Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and that was my mom's way of getting me to start to read more. That did kind of work, because then I kind of got to understand Spider-Man a little bit more, and then the next one had this, when they came back from the Secret Wars, and moved on from there, and that kind of just started the run for me. But I'd say Amazing 251.
When I was growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, before my family could afford plane travel, we'd drive everywhere. So we'd go on trips to Florida and so forth. We'd always stop at rest stops, and my parents would always grab me comic books for when they used to have spinner racks. And they picked me up a copy of Marvel Tales, which reprinted Spider-Man 128, which is a classic Bronze Age story by Conway and Andrew featuring the Vulture. And my father... I was 5 or 6. He read the story to me, did voices for the different characters. And I already knew who Spider-Man was. I watched the old cartoon and reruns and things like that, and I'd had the Power Records. But I was totally absorbed by what my father did. And I still have that actual comic. It's dilapidated. But ever since then, I was completely hooked. So.
Mine, I was about 12, and I was growing up in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. There was a sandwich shop that we would go to every now and then, and across the street I found a comic shop called Turk's. And my dad let me in one time while he was picking up the sandwiches, and I was watching G.I. Joe cartoon and getting a lot of the toys, and I mentioned that they had a G.I. Joe comic, and we couldn't get it. He's like, no, you can't get it now. But then like a week later or 2 weeks later, whatever it was, he came home from somewhere and plopped this down for me. he went into the store at some point and asked for the latest G.I. Joe comic, which was G.I. Joe 21, the silent issue. And that was the first one I read. I thought there was something wrong because there was no words. But I was enamored with the sequential art. Not that I knew what that was back then, but it told a great story. And that was where I had other comics before that, but nothing made an impression like that one, especially with my dad giving it to me the way he did, just on me mentioning, boy, that'd be neat to have. And I know number 20 was the one that was on the stand at that time, but when he went back, 21 was it. So that was the first one I remember.
I think for a lot of people in our age group, G.I. Joe in general, and that issue in particular, was a gateway for a lot of comic book reading.
Yep. And that was, and I knew that they were out there because the cartoons had commercials for the comics on them as well, which I didn't really ever see before or since.
I guess for me, it would have to be the death of Gwen Stacy story. Up to that point, obviously, Spider-Man was always my hero growing up. My brother was a big DC fan, so he always had Batman, Justice League. So I got exposed to that. Occasionally he'd have a Captain America or something like that. So that's the stuff I used to look at, and then I started getting into, occasionally he'd have a Spider-Man, a Marvel Tales, something like that. The Marvel Team-Up is where I started to get hooked on Gil Kane's artwork and also Ross Andrew. And then I got into Amazing. And I used to look at comics before I would read them. I mean, for years, just getting comics and looking at the artwork. That's what really attracted me to comics. It was when I started to read them, and that was right around the time when I got the Death of Gwen Stacy, and it totally blew me away because I just didn't expect that from a comic book. It was something that was so profound, and it just was so unexpected. And how the story was told, and even the preceding story afterwards, him going after Norman Osborn and having the flu, like having the worst flu of his life. You know what I mean? It's like things that you put into, because I think to myself when I have the flu, I'm thinking, like, imagine having to go after your worst enemy right now. You know what I mean? It's like you can't even get out of bed, yet alone, So it's such a reality, thing that really kind of grounded it for me, that this stuff happens, and this stuff happens in real life, so why not have it happen in books, So for me, I think that's what really kind of shook my world that way.
I didn't go. I thought we were going to go out of order, and then all of a sudden it went in order after me. In grade school, one of my best friends' parents owned a 7-Eleven, and so he had tons of comics at his house because they were always there. And so he had Gru laying around. I think it was Gru number 4, and that was the first comic I really remember reading and loving it. And then I would always go back to his house to read more Grus, and then I got a subscription through the mail because my parents at the time, they didn't think that comics were good, so I couldn't get to the store regularly to get any issues sequentially. So then when I saved up enough money, I mail ordered my own thing and got Gru reliably then for several years. That's how I got Gru until I was able to get to Golden Eagle on a regular basis.
Good question. Somebody else?
They don't do subscription comics anymore.
No.
Send them in the brown paper label.
I know the brown paper wrapper, yeah.
They do, don't they?
There is a subscription. Is there?
Yeah.
Something.
I mean, DCB, because just a couple of years ago, I got the girls' Superman Family Adventures in the mail from DC directly. Huh. Yeah.
Good.
Same brown paper wrapper?
I think it was in a plastic bag. Yeah.
Upgraded.
Hi guys, my name's Brandon Christopher.
Hello, Brandon.
A little bit of testimony before I ask my question also too. I was going to say reciprocation is what you guys have given to us. Either through passion for having a love of comics or just inspiring us to go out and try new things. I know for a fact you, Mr. Rios, kind of inspired my love for Legion. Was at Wizard World Philadelphia. Had to be 06 or 07. And I was so excited because I got a short box of nothing but Legion books. It was $15. And you said, you went through the box and you said, this stuff right here, it's a good read. And I said, thank you guys. You guys have inspired me to not only read comics, but, I'll try to write at comics sometimes also too. You guys have inspired a lot of creativity. And I'm sure not just for me, but other people in the listening community. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, he's going in the. There are good questions in there.
We'll be the judge of that.
Oh, all right. I got one.
So it's good. Tell him what you got, though. He got an audible, so Matt will fill in.
An audible.
All right. So complicated.
I didn't have anything planned. This guy.
What perception about the comic book industry has changed? You feel has changed within the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, you thought the industry was kind of this, that you might have only just been reading DC or Marvel, and now 10 years later, you're kind of more exposed and you're venturing more into independence or whatnot.
I think now the way we tell comics, the way we tell stories in comics has changed markedly. Through, 10 years ago, independence was almost like a dirty word. Now, most of the major publishers now are third-party publishers, Image or IDW or Dark Horse now, and they're telling, I think, better stories. So I think the way we tell stories has changed in the last 10 years. You guys?
Yeah, actually, I for myself, I remember when we first started the show, I think at the time I was strictly DC, because I think some of the earlier episodes I heard, I would rail on Marvel for not really having any continuity. So something that was happening in Thor, where New York would be burning down. It wouldn't be in any other issue, and I thought that was kind of stupid, whereas in DC, it seemed to be all connected. But now, actually, the stuff I'm reading is basically independent stuff. It's actually pulp characters. So it's something that, because of the show, I branched out and found characters that are, Batman's one of my favorite characters. So to see kind of other characters that inspired that character became more interesting to me. So
was that because of the show?
Yeah. Just because I felt we already had two Batman guys, so I was like, now I got to branch off to something else. So no, but I remember one of the rookie mistakes I made of the first con I really went to was Baltimore. And I loaded up, and I spent so much money buying all these back issues, and basically just Batman stuff, and I just kind of Batmaned out. And I went to look another avenue, and just stumbled upon the Shadow, and that kind of led the door to other pulp characters. But like I said, so now I'm basically reading more independent stuff than I would have been 10 years ago.
So Matt found pulp heroes. He got married, had a kid. Pants got short socks.
Which is a huge improvement. Yeah. It's not to be overlooked.
Thanks, I guess. What was the question?
You want it?
No, I don't want it.
Somebody, yeah.
Don't be a dick.
Too late.
I'm sorry, I thought this was the Taylor Swift Coming Home Mall tour. What's up? What's up, guys? This is Punkage from Philly. First of all, congratulations on 10 years. It's a great achievement. I just want to echo what Ian said. There's one word to describe you guys. It's the community. It's the camaraderie. For the last 10 years...
2 words.
That's
Jeez. Shut up. He's picky.
There's no... 2 words. Yeah, there's no...
Back into a corner. You can catch him if you want.
We're thinking of a third word right now.
There's no BS with you guys. What you see is what you get. You guys are friends talking about what you love. And it's percolated through all of us, everyone you see here and around the world. I mean, you guys are going to England to set up a con next week, and it's just a testament to who you guys are. You're grounded in your emotions, in your relationships with one another, and that's just fallen through us. And I want to thank you for that. And my question is, sorry, I'm not going to go through your pants, Matt, but you guys are like Liam Neeson. You have a particular skill set, each of you, that you bring to the table. So my question is, in the last 10 years, what have you guys learned from each other? Doing this podcast for that amount of time and being in each other's company for that long. What have you guys learned from each other in the last 10 years? So that's my question.
I'll throw. Actually, I learned something from Pete. Just seeing his interactions on the forums. Well, it kind of some of the stuff.
Matt, don't.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So early on, I'd be one of those young rookies that were just like, "Oh, you don't like what I like? Well, you're stupid." And it just kind of through the interactions, learned that just because I like something or you like something that I think is ridiculous or vice versa doesn't mean that I have to attack you. And in fact, I think when you're attacking somebody personally, it completely means you're out of any way to support your opinion. So on other forums that I'm a member of, when I see people making stupid comments, just kind of tearing something down, but at the same time, like for instance, a Marvel DC type of thing, they'll shred Marvel and then completely overlook the same stuff that DC does. And when you bring that to their attention, they're like, "Well, that doesn't count." So from Pete, I've actually been complimented on those forums of how I don't argue with people, but I'll have discussions. And that's something I've learned from Pete is it's better. I'd rather have a discussion with somebody than just go on flame wars back and forth because you're really getting nowhere. You're just taking up space. So that's something I got from Pete.
I've learned to trust these guys more. There's not a one of them that I wouldn't trust with almost anything in my life. It goes from opinions to friendships. If something goes wrong, I can call any of them and say, "Hey, I need help."
All right, I'll go. I've just learned so much. You kid about the socks, but I mean, I clearly have.
Fashion statement.
I clearly have limited social skills and fashion sense. So they've sometimes nice, sometimes not so nice, pointed me in the right direction of things. So I appreciate that. One of the things I love is when I travel like Brian, just as minimal as possible. Hop on a plane, hop off, no checking. We're going to lunch. I'm taking like a very small bag and things. I learned little things like that. Otherwise, I would never. I don't go out that much anymore. But when I did, it was like these guys would just show me, hey, don't be such a wuss, and go out and talk to people. So they opened me up my eyes to a lot of things. So thanks, I guess.
Thanks, I guess.
I had a good time. Sometimes.
Ring affirmation.
Wow, that was thanks, I guess.
Yeah, that's anyway.
I don't wear tube socks anymore.
I eat some green things.
I think I've come to appreciate the Golden Age more, especially through Adam and Pants, because I always had a good general knowledge of the Golden Age, but through talking to them over the years and doing different episodes or listening to different, like you did the history of DC Comics several years ago, it just opened my eyes to even more of comic history that I wasn't as well versed in as I should have been. So that's from a comic perspective, that's been one of the wonderful things from both as a listener as being part of the show is learning more about that area of comics. And what Merch is doing now with the Captain Marvel spotlights, which are amazing, just even more knowledge to soak up. So that's a lot of fun.
You're right. I think it was, I forget who said that we all had sort of like our specialty things, and we were known for certain things on the show, like either a character or a company or whatever. But as much grief that we give Pants, I loved the new areas that he brought to the show at that time, which was probably well needed at that time too, like the original art stuff and the way what's that
a niche,
yeah. But I mean, it dug us a little deeper in the world of comics too, because of the creation of the art and the a whole new scope of collectability, right? Because that's a whole other thing, and then you start realizing, what's that about? And just Pants, his knowledge, and it was interesting to see, as much as we goofed on him, how much he actually knew about comics, DC in the 50s and 60s and all that, and just comics in general, and so it was great getting to know you through the show because of that, even though we would bust your butt. So
I think that also resonates with your love of Marvel now too. Because that was something that was almost taboo to you back when we started.
I wouldn't come on episodes because of Marvel. Yeah. Like, oops, no, I'll be off. Civil War? No, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, I would say you probably evolved the most collecting habit-wise since you've come on, being strictly DC to...
My whole world's topsy-turvy right now.
Yeah, to where you are now is probably you had the most evolution.
Yeah.
I learned probably way more than I ever wanted to know about Peter's gastrointestinal system. And I learned that Peter knows more about his own gastrointestinal system than any other person on Earth. He's more closely connected with that than anyone.
Yeah, that's very true.
And grooming habits.
Jesus.
You do learn an awful lot about when you're sharing a tiny New York hotel room with about 6 people, and like how their bathroom habits work, and how they shower, and how they sleep, and who snores and who doesn't, and who you can safely share a bed with, who you do not want to share a bed with, when you would rather sleep on the floor or on the chair, or who's coming and going at what hours of the day and night, and it's pretty interesting.
Actually, I think the best person to share a bed with would be Pete, because usually when you're getting up, he's just getting in. So you basically
that's right. You have the bed to yourself for half the night.
Yeah. I want to say some favorite moments that I had of just things we did on the show. Most of mine that I can think of revolve around Jamie arguing with either Peter or Brian. Jamie always said he had a very love-hate relationship with Peter, and boy, did they have a grand old time battling it out.
DMZ, anybody?
That was Brian.
That was Brian.
That was Brian, I apologize.
Which even made me laugh harder because Brian and Jamie were so close as friends, but boy, when they butt heads, look out.
Wasn't there one where somebody threw it to you, Pete, and you're like, no, this is between
That
you
was
two.
that one.
That was that one.
That's I love that clip where Brian's like, "Well, no, argue." He's like, "Right, Peter." I'm like, "No, hey, no. You know when to step away when that's happening."
Yeah, don't poke that bear.
It didn't happen often, but it happened.
No, but when it happened,
and it happened with a lot of us too. Like we would go round and round. A lot of it too is just because you sort of get frustrated. You're like, you don't understand. You're not seeing my point, and then and some of it too is butt-headedness. I'm sure we would say that about Jamie too. He was in his ways.
That DMZ argument in particular, because he was arguing based on like his gut feeling, and I'm trying to argue on known and established geopolitical things that are real, and it was like, okay, I'm happy to have an argument with you, but you're not arguing any points. You're just saying, no, that's stupid, or that no, I don't know, I can't do this.
Plus, we all know what buttons to push. We all buttons to push with each other too, right? So you dig at them and you dig at them, and you're like, yeah, those make for great moments. Even Adam has, dropped an F-bomb every now and then.
Once or twice or 16 times, yeah.
All I got to do is mention Lucky Charms.
Ferris Bueller or Ferris Bueller. I'm afraid that one's worn smooth, my friend.
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
I'm over my shell shock from the mustache.
At least one of us is.
You guys have inspired a lot of people to, listen to podcasts, to branch out in your comic. I mean, I watched you guys branch out in your comic book reading. In your early days, you were pretty much main publishers and all, and you've really gone, branched out a lot. But I'm curious, several of you have children now, and I mean, from big to little. I'm curious, how is that working for, as far as inspiring your kids? I mean, I know I have one son that likes to read comics, but of the 3, and as far as podcasting, I don't think my kids have ever listened to any of my podcasts, which I don't blame anybody, but, is this a natural thing, for your kids? I mean, do they think they're going to grow up to do podcasts, or is it, I'm just curious how that works for you guys.
Ben, come here. Come here.
Hey, who invited you?
I did.
No, I have a question.
Well, now we. So, do you read comics that I read?
Yeah.
Or do you also read stuff you read? What do you like to read?
Flash, Scribblenauts, definitely. I love that.
Nova. Guardians,
yeah. Bone, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot.
So, in other words, the TV and the movies are working.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's. I mean, I am still more of a DC guy, and I am a Batman fan and a Justice League fan. And while he might like those and cartoons and stuff with Batman, he'd rather read Marvel stuff. And the movies are totally working on him. Now, he has an easier gateway with me because I order comics regularly. So he's like, hey, is there anything of the new Flash or the new Guardians or the new Nova or what's... That might make it easier for him, but it's still piquing an interest in him that I didn't infest or put in his place. Yeah, I have comics, but he's the one that's asking the questions of what to read. I think one of the only ones I did was Bone, and he took off and read that whole thing at one shot a few years ago, and from there it just keeps branching out more and more.
You were dismissed.
Piss off.
I didn't say piss off. That's at home.
Well, it's interesting for me because when Clara was about 7, I got her a couple essentials and a couple showcases because they were like $3 or $4 or $5 at a convention or something, and I had some sitting on my shelf, so I just let her read them. And those 50s DC comics are way more interesting to a 7-year-old than 60s Marvel books. And so now she's pouring through all of this Silver Age DC stuff because in her, like, that just makes more sense for a kid. And it's like every time, like, I'm happy to buy her more, but it's also like, well, why aren't you reading the Marvel ones? You know? But, you know, what she spent her Christmas money on was Volume 5 of Legion Showcase Volume 5 because it came out, like, December 31st, and she was so happy to spend her Christmas money on that. Like, she couldn't wait. Who knew?
Fee hasn't gotten that far. She'll be 2 next month. But I'm still trying to get her past the Wiggles phase. But I can say for my wife, she's not reading, but like, for instance, Guardians of the Galaxy, I didn't really have an interest to see that in the theater. But as soon as she saw Marvel Studios, she said, we're going. And so she's kind of at the point now where those are movies she trusts. As soon as she sees that name, Marvel Studios, at this point, no matter what it is, she wants to go to see it. So to some extent, that's rubbed off. And early on, she was reading some Ultimate Spider-Man, so she already had some type of a taste of how Marvel is.
My sons, well, they're my stepsons. When I met them, they were 3 and 6, and of course I introduced them to comics immediately. And because I have had a business for 16 years, a comic shop, they're surrounded by comics every day. I'm always bringing stuff home, and as a teacher also, I'm just so relieved my kids actually like to read. And they're always asking, what books do you have this week? They're starting to develop their own tastes. They do listen to the podcast when we're driving. Sometimes they want to, sometimes they don't, but they're on, so they have to listen to them. But they come to the store with me on a regular basis, and I hope as they get older they'll help me out even more in the shop. And they both clearly love the media, and they love the characters. They love going to the movies. And whether they want it to or not, they've just been in it because it's all around our house. It's everywhere. So I'm just glad that they really enjoy reading them. And like when I was a kid, comics was one of the gateways to becoming someone who loved reading. And I can tell you as a teacher that most young people don't really read, hence the way they speak the English language. So I'm just relieved that my sons, through comics, and I think a lot of people could say the same thing, really enjoy reading. And I think that's one of the most important things comics still do, whether it's digital or print, when kids are given that opportunity. So.
Which I think, at lunch, when we were in high school, I think we each had a comic that we were reading, and one of the teachers came around and told us to put that away, that it wasn't appropriate.
I can remember one time reading Gerard Jones and Brett Blivens' The Trouble with Girls, and the school librarian came by, and we were reading a scene where the main character, Lester Girls, was entering the back door of one of the female characters of the book, and
that's the quote of the episode, ladies and gentlemen, right there.
I was told
we
to
have
put
our
that
title.
one away. That's the only time I can remember that happening, and Mr. Benz did have
Hallelujah.
good reason, I think, for doing that in hindsight. But
Hindsight.
I mean, my daughter doesn't read comics. Obviously, she had no choice but to be stuck in a comic store for many countless hours that I'm sure these guys can attest to. I did support her to read as much as possible. I told her I would only buy her things if she promised that she would read it. But I also got, because of the art thing, that if she was just something visually attracted to, I wasn't opposed to doing so. But I wanted to instill in her that, it's not just something to have. There's something there that I wanted to, for her sake, in some way, shape, or form, get her interested in reading. So occasionally I would buy comics and such, and there were certain things that, she was interested in. Scooby-Doo, and at the time, like Xena comics and stuff were out. So those are the things as a girl she was interested in. It wasn't until novels came around that, even in her teens, that she really hadn't acquired a taste for reading to enjoy reading. Up until that point, it was still like, oh, I have to read this book for school, I have to do this. To me, it was more of a chore thing that I comprehended from her, which I get it. So really, novels, I think that instilled to her that she did read some of those books, and it did give her some sort of enjoyment and some fantasy. And I also think, obviously, even though there's visual there, it festers the imagination. But for me, it was, I think, coming to these episode 100, 200, 300, the super shows, things of that nature. When a father has a child who's in their preteens, things of that nature, she had to come to the store with me when I went to the store. She had no alternative. But to see her, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if she would still be, this is corny. You know what I mean? This is, So if you look back through the pictures and such, she came to every one of those voluntarily, not because I made her come. So for me, that is a testament, and that gives me something out of this that I can enjoy to a whole different level, because that's something she willfully chooses, and she still goes to the movies with me. She sees all the. I mean, right now her favorite movie ever is Guardians of the Galaxy. She loves that movie. So those things, and we sit and talk about them. We'll go to watch the movies, and we'll sit and talk about it afterwards. She'll like what she likes, and she'll ask me what I like. So we can have those conversations and kind of get a gist of what we still enjoy with your own opinion. So to me, that's a fulfillment to a level that I don't think anything will ever replace for me. So.
I don't have a kid, but my girlfriend's 11 years younger, so it's kind of the same thing. But she does watch Flash and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Gotham and the movies. In fact, I said at the studio, I didn't get to see Guardians in the movie theater, unfortunately, just too busy or whatever, and I was upset about it. And every time it would be brought up, what movies do we have to watch? We have to watch. I would keep saying we have to watch Guardians. It was post Christmas. We have to watch Guardians of the Galaxy. She's like, and okay. So it got to the point where somebody said it one more time. We have to watch Guardians of the Galaxy in January. And I said, well, I have a confession. I did actually watch it when I was home here in Reading in Christmas by myself at my sister's house. And she said, that's all right. I saw it too up at my dad's house. So that was good. I was like, all right, good. We're at a point where she'll sit down and watch the movies herself, So I thought that was fun. We're cheating on each other with Guardians.
I have neither children nor a girlfriend, but my cat is... perfectly happy to curl up in my lap while I read comics or watch geeky things on TV, and never once judges me any more than she does for simply being human. And she's put in guest appearances on the Time Bubble podcast, too. So
never fails.
Hi, I'm Sarah Garbera, and I'm a teacher. And a few months ago, one of my coworkers, who is also a teacher, told me that she went into a bookstore to purchase, I think it was a graphic novel or trade for her one class. And at that store, they give discounts to teachers. And so she went up to purchase it and asked to have the discount. And the person at the register said that comic books were not educational. Oh. So she couldn't have the discount.
What store was this?
She didn't specify what store.
Probably Barnes & Noble.
But, so I think it might have been.
Yeah, because they give a discount to teachers.
Yeah. So I was wondering your thoughts. If someone said to you that comic books are not educational reading material, what would you say?
Bullshit.
I would point them to the countless interviews that we've done with how many creators, especially the international ones, that learn to read English and learn to speak English by reading American comics. I would point them to my 8-year-old who reads 300-page books in one night because when she was 6, she was burning through comics in essentials and showcase editions, right? Like, they totally are. And my vocabulary, my father, who has a master's degree in English, when I was growing up, didn't think I should read comics. He thought it was a waste of time and money or whatever. And then at some point, he realized that my vocabulary, there were words that I knew that he didn't know. And where did I get them? By reading comics, specifically a bunch of words in GRU, which tends to throw around some, 10-cent words here and there, right? And so it's absolute. I mean, it's complete and total falsehood that comics are not educational. Reading is reading. You get better at everything when you read.
And there's different
stuff.
facets of it as well, too. I mean, reading a novel without pictures. I mean, for me, it's like you sit there and you picture it. So you're festering your imagination, your creativity. Obviously, with writing, reading poetry, things of that nature. You see a lot of people that have joined from that. And again, just from the thing that Stanley always said, I never wrote down to my audience, and I did. I learned vocabulary through comics. If there was a word in there that I read and that I didn't know what it was, I looked it up. You know what I mean? It was, so I mean, in some way, shape, or form, it's a benefit. It's, and it doesn't have to always be like like an English thing, that you learn from it. But there's so many things that I think it does generate in one shape or form that it's always a benefit in some way.
Plus, when you think about a lot of what's considered literature today, I mean, 50 Shades of Grey is not literature, it's Drek, okay? It's not well written, and when you think about some of the stuff like Sandman, Strangers in Paradise, two off the top of my head, that's literature. I don't care if their pictures are there or not. That's as good as any novel you're ever going to read, period. Especially most of the junk you're going to buy in a bookstore today. So the person who said that, A, is a moron, all right? And B, again, as a teacher, anything that gets kids reading, I see it in my own kids, other people mentioned their kids here. Comics are a wonderful vehicle for that, and the most mature books. You're talking about Vertigo, for example, what have you. Some of that stuff is as high art as anything you're ever going to experience in your life, and whether it's the comic book medium or not, it should be celebrated for that reason. I think it's a terribly ignorant, idiotic statement to make, and it's just.
My first reaction to him would be like, "What do you consider, to be?"
Yeah, it's.
You know what I mean?
Right. I'm not going to go on and start soapboxing, but people like that.
Well, I know Adam. I mean, he wrote a frickin' master's about comics, or more or less, So, but I have one silly story and one real story. Like my silly story about that whole education thing is when I was in grade school. This could actually be an argument for that person's comment, but they were talking about something, and somebody put a symbol up, the Nazi swastika symbol up, and asked if we knew what that was. And I did, because it was just in a Supergirl comic featuring this character called Black Star, because she was part of
her parents were Holocaust survivors.
Right, exactly. So I mean, so crazy, but I knew it. I knew what it was. But the other thing too is just in the most recent previews. I mean, I'm being educated today. There's a book coming out called Ghetto Brother, and it's about a Hispanic character in the Bronx who was I can't remember his name. Sorry, I apologize. I just discovered it not too long ago. And he was part of a gang, but then he became sort of like an intermediary between a bunch of gangs in the Bronx, and eventually would create this working studio where it's, at least in the description, it's saying where hip hop first had some of its earliest origins, and it's all based around this Hispanic character. And I'm sort of in this comics, Latino and comics phase, and I was like, well, that's great. So I ordered it, and I can't wait to read it. So comics, there you go, comics as education, right there.
When you mentioned the vocabulary, like Kevin mentioned Stan Lee. I mean, I remember growing up, Stan Lee would use words like Inglenook, and I would, much to the chagrin of my friends, I would incorporate words of my vocabulary ever since. And you read a lot of those old Silver Age books, and you're right. When he was and other writers were writing at that time, they were not writing down to the audience because they wanted to sell more comics and expand the demographic. And I benefited from that. I mean, there's so many great vocabulary words that I absorbed through, obviously reading in general, but growing up with comics.
Well, Chris, I think you've already expressed my indignation as well and as concisely as I could have. But yeah, it's just a blanket dismissal of comics as a whole as not uneducational is. You might just as well make a statement such as, Harlequin romances are trash and uneducational, therefore all books are uneducational. Just to condemn an entire artistic medium based on a visible minority is just utterly absurd.
I was going to say, one time I tried, someone bought some comics from me through eBay, and when I went to sell it medium mail, and I said they were comic books inside, the postal clerk said, well, those aren't media, considered for media mail. And I asked why, and she said, because they have ads in them. And I just said, well, if I buy a book by a novel, doesn't the book also reference other books that, hey, if you like this, here's another one in this series? And when she said, yeah, I said, well, what's the difference? And so she said, I'll allow it this time. So then after that, I just said they were trade paperbacks, and we were good. But I was just kind of surprised that she didn't consider comic books as for media mail.
I've sent comics via media mail countless times.
Yeah.
She's a moron, too.
Yeah. She's on the list.
It's media mail.
So, yes. Sarah, I'm very sorry
and you
that
should be grateful the post
your
office
coworker
getting
had that
business at this
experience.
point on top of that.
Can we all descend as a group with every teacher we know on the same bookstore and all be like, we're buying comics for our class? Let's get Adam Umack, right? And he's been a listener for a long time, and he's a big advocate of comics in the classroom, and he took a lot of flack in the early part of his career for doing it, and he changed people's minds. I mean, it's a big deal. Charlito trying to do.
I was just going to say, yeah.
You know, raising the whole purpose of the Denver Comic Con was to raise money for comics in the classroom. You know?
And think about how both school libraries and public libraries, you see a lot of them now have extensive graphic novel selections where 15, 20 years ago, nobody did. No. So that's a positive step as well.
I've got a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good question.
Yes. I've got a question from one of our members in the audience. Brian Nixon. You come up to the mic for a minute, please, Mr. Nixon? Brian's been a long-time listener of the show, been on the forums, Fig Painter. Brian, Peter, and I met him, I guess, was it 4 years ago, you said, out at the Emerald City Comic Con? And you've been talking to Shane for years back and forth. Yeah. And Shane would tell me he'd be in the parking lot at lunch talking to Brian Nixon forever and ever. They never met until this week.
Correct.
So, how was that?
I was actually debating whether I should come up.
And by the way, you're too tall, so lift the mic up.
Tall?
There you go.
I'm sorry. I was actually debating whether to stand up and say this because it's been said before, but if you guys have a legacy, it's this. Because last night I met people for the first time that I've never met before other than on a forum or on Facebook or on things like that. And there was never a moment where you sat there and go, I don't feel a part of this. I greeted people with hugs that were strangers physically that you guys are responsible for making friends. And with Shane, and I'll try to do this without, and see I've already failed, getting emotional is because it started with a simple, hey, I'm looking for this certain action figure. I travel all over the place. I was trying to count. I think I've listened to you guys in 17 different states. And so, and it started so I would get into a lot more stores. I could search a lot more places. So I would send back on the forums, hey, I found this. Do you want it? Yes or no? And then it became texting. And then it became phone calls. And then it became phone calls, how's your family? And it became things, Skyping and talking just about things in general. And we had never met. And I consider him one of my, a brother. And so when this opportunity came, it was really special for me. And I went to my boss, and I actually had to reschedule a sales route so that I could come here, fly in from Utah, and meet my brother for the first time. And I owe that to you guys. You made that possible. Not just that, but friends, I look back here. That, like I said, growing up, I didn't have friends that read comics. There was no internet, so if you didn't know anybody, you didn't talk to anybody. You read them alone, and you were the person. I would walk down to make photocopies at my grandma's so I could color them, and I would put them in a binder so no one could see that I was walking with comic books. And now we have people flying from all over the nation, all over the world, to celebrate comics in a small little store in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I applaud you guys for staying with it for 10 years. Here's to 10 more. Here's to absent friends.
Here.
And someday, Brian, I'll make it out to Utah. I'm sure we'll make it. You keep come to the Utah Comic Con. They're doing this in Salt Lake. Okay. Is your house still open, or your grandparents' house still open?
Jesus.
I need a place to stay. I'm not
be fully stocked with the
Stalker
food that I
patty,
like.
anyone?
He offered. He offered.
I did offer.
Wow.
We've got an empty house.
Change the address.
And I told him if he came, that way I wouldn't have to worry about, because I've heard about the leering at the beds, kicking the beds. I figure if I stick him in a completely other house.
Smart.
See?
That's the best plan ever.
Smart. Smooth move.
Ben, we'll all say we're going to go to that con, and then you just show up all by yourself.
Do you have a question, Ben? Go ahead. Yes, go. You can turn it down.
Okay,
Don't embarrass me.
So I remember an episode where, well, it started out when I was 8, 9, when we had this thing called a dime, and
Oh, jeez.
and it's where you swore you got a dime, and I have a question. What was your favorite events with everybody here? But my favorite event was an episode where I got $20 from Peter. Because
how much do I owe you this episode?
Not as much as that time.
In exchange for what?
That was episode 1000. If I said a bad word or
so we had it. If I said a curse word, we'd pay the kids a dime. So Ben and Matt and Carlene came to episode 1000, and Ben's sitting behind us, and I guess Peter saw or didn't really notice, and starts letting things fly, and they kept going, dime, dime, dime. And Peter's like, what's that mean? And I explained it, and he just whips out a 20 and goes, here, I'm not holding back.
Nice.
Wait, so what was the other part of it? What was the other part?
Favorite events.
Oh, with everybody.
Shoo.
May not be my favorite, but it's one I always remember too. When Pants and I drove to Toronto Comic Con, and that lady almost front-ended you right at the border. Like we almost caused an international incident because she came in. And it's recorded. It's on there. It's great. That was a fun trip up. That was really funny. I like that one.
I loved. Sorry, Matt. I loved Peter. That other trip we took when we were in Chicago between cons, between going to C2, E2, and Planet Comic Con in Kansas City, and we stayed in Chicago on a Wednesday. We did a comic book crawl. We went to about 7, 8 different comic book stores and recorded there. And that was a hell of a lot of fun. I wasn't necessarily always the best companion on the trip there, but I had a blast with that. Looking back at that now,
I really enjoyed the episode we did after the series finale of Lost, just because how pissed off Brian was because nobody else thought it stank. But the only one I'd say would top that is the very first con that we all went to, the Baltimore con, because I just felt like we were all there, and it was kind of really trying to promote the show, and it just seems like we were spread out all over the place trying to get whoever we could.
Yeah, that was good.
I think that first Pittsburgh con, too, where Pants and I had planned to go out just on our own to the con, and then a bunch of the rest of the guys came out, and we ended up having a booth, setting up, hanging out. We met the Wild Pig crew there. That was a lot of fun. That's one of the best cons I was ever at.
To piggyback on that, I have two favorite ones. They're kind of connected. One was that same event because I have a very robust laugh. And you had and you had never been around that before, all of you guys. And I was like twitching on the floor and doing whatever I normally do, and I don't even drink. And the look of sheer awe on your face was so priceless. I cherish it to this day. And the other memories, of course, all the various parties we've had that usually involve some kind of playful humiliation or what have you. And those are all cherished. So, It's the comradeship.
Fellowship.
Indeed, fellowship, yes.
Lem. Lem said that. Lem said that right here, episode 100.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Friends, family, fellowship. I think it was something like that. Friends, food, fellowship, or whatever.
You know, one thing I just wanted, you brought that up. I only met Lem a few times, but we have that painting they did of him, the artist did of him with the superheroes around it. I have that hanging in my shop because
There was 3 different ones.
The original is
Okay.
up front. Yeah.
Yeah, and the few times I talked to him at some length. He was the type of comic book retailer that was such a breath of fresh air to me because most of them are slime, and you wouldn't want to introduce them to your daughter or anything like that. But he was such a classy person, and just he epitomized to me what a comic book retailer should be.
Why do you think we're all sitting here?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I don't. That's a tough question. From a Pride standpoint, the second Super Show, because it was like our biggest, best event, and it was exceptional, and everyone had a great time, and just everybody loved it. But then on a very personal level, it's sort of hard to pinpoint. Lots of the crazy antics with Peter and I in hotel rooms, and making U-turns in Pittsburgh, and moonings in Baltimore, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Just all of those moments are. I don't know exactly which one occurred in exactly which place or whatever, but all of them sort of combined are the best.
Pittsburgh is a challenging city to drive through because it's not a grid. So
Yeah,
it can lead to frustration very quickly.
Numerous bridges and tunnels, and yeah.
And there's no left turns.
Yeah.
I think mine, similar to Pants's, mine is kind of a comic shop crawl related memory. It was several free comic book days ago. Whichever year it was, Spider-Man 3 came out. Remember, we went to a bunch of comic shops around like the Pottstown area. And we then ended up, we went to that huge sushi buffet restaurant in Norristown.
Because you were driving, right?
I think I was,
Remember
yes.
how we were all concerned with Bird driving with us? Look at you.
Why was this a concern, and why am I just hearing about it now?
Every time, Adam, every time you drive, it's a concern to us if we're in the car with you.
There will be words about this later. But
notice how Matt walked away right as we started talking about it.
He's the only one I remember criticizing my driving that day. He said it was too predictable. Like I wasn't jumping shark tanks or something. It wasn't
Not crashing is too
But
predictable.
anyway, we went to comic shops. We had our fill of geekery that way. We went to have sushi. We went to see Spider-Man 3 at an IMAX theater, and then we finished the day by just coming home to Brian's house and recording a podcast about it. So we got to experience comics, adaptations of comics, and podcasting about comics, and we did the whole thing as a group, and it was just a very nice way to spend a Saturday afternoon. It's kind of stuck with my mind as a nice day.
I think the Hot 22 will live in infamy.
Yes. That's very true.
Was that Matt's bachelor party?
Matt's bachelor party? It's a classic moment.
Matt is still absent from the panel at the moment.
Or just you almost decking a stripper.
It's not often.
It was a reflex.
He actually pulled a fit and pulled back, and we had to stop him from...
No, it was a backhand, actually.
As I recall, there was more of a fist, but,
I can remember that was so dirty. Ryan had said, I think I'm going to head back to the hotel. I'm gone. Let's go.
And we don't just mean dirty in the metaphorical
No,
sense.
it
We mean
was
literally grime.
Definitely need a tetanus shot after that.
I don't know, but Chris's wife had a great time.
Well, yeah, the women enjoyed themselves more than. Well, you were grinning ear to ear and throwing money at our female friends to throw out to the dance on the stage.
I don't think I gave $1 in that joint.
I thought you were giving money to our wives.
No. I'm a stand in the cheap seats and let other people pay for it kind of guy.
Have you just met Brian?
I know he's frugal, but
you don't
know. I'm remembering just this ghoulish grin on your face as you just watched our wives and girlfriends enjoying the dancers, basically. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yes, it was.
Here's to the goddess.
Oh,
Here's
the
to the
goddess.
Uptown Cabaret.
Yeah.
Here's to the Deja Vu out in Seattle.
You remember the names?
Yes, I do.
These are strip clubs.
Now that I expected. Of all of us to remember
the only
names,
name
Peter
that I
was.
remember is the Goddess in Baltimore because that was that was an
still
interesting
there?
place. I don't know.
Somebody
I haven't
know?
been to Baltimore in
Anybody know?
years.
Anybody know?
Don't know.
I live there now. I don't go in there. I just pass them on the street.
Sure.
I'm already in enough trouble as this is my girlfriend, right?
I wanted to bring up real quick that one of the best things about Super Show were the panels that ran there were some of the most intimate and personal panels that, especially the creator panels, that I've ever been to at any convention I've ever been to. Period. The Simonsons panel that you guys did, that was probably to this day, listening to it as a podcast afterwards and being there in person, one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, just for the stories they told about the industry and how open and honest they were about the whole damn thing. That I will never frickin' forget. And the last Uncle Sal panel at Super Show with Jamie up there with him was absolutely worth every single penny, and I will never forget that anyway. No damn doubt about it. That was good stuff.
If there's anyone up here at this point, or if there's any one of us that would not stop doing the podcast, it's definitely Jamie. Jamie was one who always said he will be doing this. He wanted to do it forever and ever. Where the rest of us were like, oh, geez.
Now, if there's one good reason for the rest of us to continue doing it, it's because we know Jamie would want us to, and because as long as we continue doing it, it will be as if Jamie had not left us.
I can remember one of the conversations we had. It was around the time that I sort of stepped away from the show, and Jamie said, "Well, we got to keep going. 10 years is coming. We got to go to 10 years, at very least 10 years." And here we are, 10 years later, and I may as well still going sometimes because with all the personnel coming and going and like that. But it's hard to not talk to friends about comics. It comes easy. I look forward to it a lot of times because you guys just are just wonderful to talk to about not just comics, other things. We go all over the place, and just the tangents we go on are just.
What are you talking about? We're very focused.
Yeah. We script is stuck to all the time. Just a lot of fun.
Hence, how are you holding up with this whole David Letterman retiring thing? You gonna be all right?
Oh yeah, I think that'll be fun. I'm getting an extra 5 hours a week to read comics now, basically. I probably will. I have in my mind that I'm going to do some sort of an episode on that before in the next 2 months. I have a little bit of time to work on that. But yeah, it's been a big part of my life for 30 years. Been watching him and see him retire. I've been very lucky to go up to see him in person all these years and to actually briefly have a conversation with him. We actually talked comics very recently about his appearance in the Avengers before the show started. I asked him if he remembered anything about it. Of course, he didn't because it was 30-some years ago. But yeah, I'm going to miss that. I'd love to somehow get up there and get in that last studio audience. May 20th, I guess, is the last episode. I don't know if it's going to be taped that day, so I'll have to take a week off and hang up around New York around the studio and see if anyone can get me in.
All right, there we go. There's a true test of the CGS web. Like, is there somebody in the Ed Sullivan Theater or something with the tickets that can, pants at Comic Geek Speak, get him in?
Hey, just treat it like it's one of the cons where you get there like 5 hours before they open up and just sit.
Oh, I've done that before, yeah. That's why I got an autograph from him, just waiting out in front of the theater since, like 8 in the morning. See him drive by his Ferrari. Oh, there he goes.
Get in the car. His Ferrari, you know what he drives.
Well, this was 20 years ago.
Yes, exactly. He did have a problem with a stalker for a while, didn't he?
That autograph's not on a restraining order, right?
Okay. He only thinks those clothes go to Goodwill, but they're mine.
I don't get that.
You have to get dark every once in a while.
Somebody else want to go to the mic?
Are we wrapping up? No. We just keep going.
Just keep talking.
Okay. All right. I got to pee.
I want potty.
I'm Jason Daniels, Evening 639 on the forums, and I have you guys to thank for actually getting me back into comics because I had stopped reading after one more day, and I was away for about 5 years. And in 2013-ish, I decided that it had been 5 years too long, and I really wanted to get back in. So I amateurishly just bought everything new on the rack and it was right in the middle of Forever Evil, and I was confused as hell. So I went online, looked up comic podcasts, found you guys, and through listening to you, I actually gained a bit of a focus to get me back in. First couple of episodes were interesting in contrast to when I got brave enough to start exploring, because it was just Brian and Peter and I think Shane and Jamie, and it was a very loose conversational style, more akin to what I would experience with my friends. When I got brave enough to start exploring the episodes, I went with something I was interested in, so I typed in X-Men and found the X-Men spotlights. And then listening to Chris and Murd take over the show, it was like listening to James Lipton and Jack Higgins having a conversation. But it was enthralling. So that actually leads me to my question. When you guys do the spotlights, obviously there is a lot of focus that goes into that, and it must be a test of discipline and endurance to read all of that material and go over it and regurgitate it in a very focused manner. How do you go about that? When you get the idea for a spotlight, like, do you guys talk about it ahead of time, and then, like, do you take time to do your research, do your reading, or is it just kind of something that flows?
Oh, you go ahead, Merck. Go ahead.
Okay, well, really, thank you, Jason. And I apologize. Jason made a present of a placard that reads "Adam Murdo, Staff Crisisologist," which really should be sitting right here, right now. I'm sorry, it's behind me. I totally forgot about it when I sat down, but trust me, it's here. So, speaking for myself here, Chris, you may have a different philosophy to these things, and really, Chris deserves the lion's share of the credit for reinventing the concept of the CGS Spotlight with his various Marvel character spotlights that we've done over the years, which have been phenomenally. Yeah.
Can we make that word?
Phenomenally denominational. Yeah. They've been very good, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Enormously informative and entertaining. Everybody loves them, and we all know it. So what usually happens when we do the spotlight episodes is whether it's Chris or myself that's in charge. One of us takes the point. Usually it's Chris in the Marvel spotlights, and the more recent Fawcett/DC Captain Marvel ones, it's been me. We do our research process and compile a set of notes, sort of an outline that we then send to everybody else who's going to be participating in the recording of that episode. And then when the day comes, we all gather. We'll all have had a chance to read the outline ahead of time. And we sit down, and the discussion leader, who prepared the notes in the first place, then assumes his position at the metaphorical lectern and begins just holding forth. And everybody else who happens to have notes or first-hand experience with the material we're being discussed is free to just jump in and interrupt at any time and, to ask questions or contribute additional facts. And it just kind of goes on that way. So it's kind of it's a collaborative thing, really. It's a classroom discussion. There's always a discussion leader, a teacher, if you will, but everybody else brings something to it. And so we all kind of learn from each other's personal experience of the material.
And that's an important point, because if it's just you or I just talking and no one else was speaking, it wouldn't be as interesting, because people are asking questions. Oftentimes when I'm leading one, you bring in additional notes that flesh out things maybe I forgot, or a lot of times I'll ask you questions I want you to supplement things that you know more of than I would, for example.
You usually turn to me for the villain sidebars, for example.
Pants has scolded me for some technical things. Sorry, Pants. But that approach has always worked well. And in terms of prep, for me, I have a very large library of graphic novels and comic history magazines and books, and I just go through everything. And if I could get paid to do spotlights for a living, I'd be the happiest man in this room, without question, because I thoroughly enjoy just going through all the history and just sort of compiling and sort of carving out a presentation when we're on the air. I just wish I had more time to do them, because some of the more uglier aspects of real life will get in the way of that. I just wish we could do them more and more, but they're a real labor of love, and I thoroughly enjoy doing them.
Yes, and despite the limited amount of time you have to do them, Chris, they are always top-notch.
That's nice to hear, especially since I do some of them pretty much at the last moment, so that's especially reassuring to hear that. But yeah, we're working on you have more Captain Marvel to do, and I'm working on more Daredevil at the moment. So
right, and Fantastic Four is coming a little bit further down the line.
John Byrne, the John Byrne FF want to do very much for Jamie and really do a good job on on that one.
Yep.
So
That is, if anyone's been wondering why it's been such a long time since the FF and the Bronze Age spotlight, it has been because Chris, out of the goodness of his heart and his boundless generosity, has provided all of us with enormous copies of the Fantastic Four by John Byrne omnibus. It's like 1,000 pages of comics, because he wants us all to have a first-hand experience of the material so we can have a real, even more so than usual, collaborative discussion of it, so that we know that this material was very important to Jamie. And so it is in his honor and memory that we will be devoting extra time and care to that particular installment of the CGS FF Spotlight series.
I know if I just pounded the table, if I said don't pound the table, just pounded the table, that's fine. I love the... Oh, go ahead.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Absolutely, yes.
I want to get in on that FF Spotlight because I have read the whole Byrne
course,
run
brother.
and love it.
You betcha.
it'll be in probably end of March. We're going to do that.
Yeah, I want to do that too. So
we'll send out an email, the precise date.
I love these spotlights because I love comics history, especially when I'm only roughly familiar with it. These Marvel spotlights are just tremendous. Like the Silver Age, Bronze Age stuff. I love those so much. I love jumping in occasionally when I can with my pithy comments on that. But those are some of our most popular episodes, and it just blows my mind because we do so many things that's people love, and they're almost angry when we don't do them enough. Like we've seen some feedback. Where are you going to do with this Marvel? You mentioned the FF Bronze Age, and I love these spotlights. And now they used it to be done around anniversaries of characters, but now we're just going. What brought you to do the Captain Marvel one?
Oh, because this past...
it's 70...
Right, 75th.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Diamond anniversary.
Yeah, and I love Chris's notes too. He sends out there because he's a teacher. Of course, he gets nice outlines and everything.
Now, Murd,
Thank you, sir.
Not only the spotlights do I love listening to Chris and Murd lament about whatever subject matter it is. There was the Final Crisis episode that Murd did. What was the one explaining all the Superman?
Oh, right. That was Final Crisis number 7 and the Superman Beyond 2-issue series. Yeah.
That was, even I was lost on that, and Murd laid that out for me. So I just love listening to these guys go on and on about the subject matter, and I can sit there in awe of the information they have.
Yeah. Happy to help.
The other thing I love about the spotlights that when we do them is we can shed light on creators not a lot of people aren't as familiar with who've contributed to the history of a particular character or title or the medium in general. And that's one of the main reasons I love doing them is because I get to talk about these artists that I admire who maybe not as many people are aware of. Or, they were shortchanged like Bill Finger or something along those lines. So that's always part of the fun of doing that as well.
Yes.
Peter has left the table, and suddenly the episode is rudderless.
Come on, Danny. You want to pick one from here. Up towards the front area. Come on. Come on.
We're acknowledging the Wild Pig contingent right here in the front row of the audience. Let's shine a spotlight on them, folks.
Billy.
Hello, I'm Bill. And I'm
Hi, Bill.
I'm medium height, and this microphone seems like it was set up just for me. I work for Chris, managing Wild Pig Comics. He's part of the slimy comic book owner contingent, the slimiest. If you guys had to, if you guys had one thing that you could go back and change any point over the 10 years with the podcast, what would you change?
No more pants.
You mean the person or the article of clothing?
That's part of our upcoming House of P storyline.
So good.
I'll get started off, and I don't mean to bring anybody down, but if I could do it again, I wouldn't have left the show back when I did, because I missed those last 6 months getting to see Jamie on a regular basis. That's one of my biggest regrets, because getting together, seeing everybody now is what brought me back to the show. So that's what I would change. I would have never left.
I know you said that almost right away, and I'm glad you came back, because being able to see everybody on a regular basis.
Come on, help me out here.
All right. I would change that we could figure out a way to do this instead of real jobs, and this would be our real job.
Testify.
One of the best parts of being in the studio is when Pants loses it and has a laughing fit in the studio. Because you can't see him, like, he's making gestures like a Roman orator, and then his face turns beet red. It's classic.
He's usually covering his mouth.
Yeah.
So that he's not heard so loudly.
That's great.
Wow.
Anybody else? That's a tough question.
I would just say attendance, that I could participate more. That would be the big change.
Apparently,
you can still change that, you know.
If I could, I would.
I know. Well, heck, you brought your child to one of the recordings in a little bassinet on the counter while you're recording.
She's more mobile now.
Well, I know that now, but
it gets harder later.
Yeah.
Boy, I don't even know.
Apparently, we're living without regrets here.
I thought, Brian, I thought you, if you could go back, you would change the name of the show.
Really?
I thought at one point you said that you just kind of threw the name together.
Oh yeah, it took about 8 seconds, and I was like, "Yeah, that's the name." I mean, because I didn't anticipate it would be some 10-year long running entertainment and knowledge device. I just figured it would just be this thing that we did for a little while and then move on to something else. So, but I mean, now in retrospect, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with it.
It works.
Yeah.
Has an internal rhyme.
Right.
What more can you ask?
Exactly.
Actually, you know what's funny about that conversation is a little bit of tangent. Is I'm wearing, Matt tweeted a while ago, and he was like, I wonder if I should wear the same thing I wore to episode 100. We have a picture here, Golden Eagle, like right in front of one of these tables with all of us. And so I looked and saw what shirt it was, and I have a Loopy Dave CGS guy, CGS man design shirt that I wore at episode 100. So I wore it, and on the back it says CGS, and it has the symbol, right? The symbol for the O.
Mm-hmm.
And my girlfriend, she saw me put it on, and she said, first of all, she said, well, where's the S? And I said, well, it's C, it's a G back, and the little spindle things are the S. She goes, oh, I thought it was kind of like a microphone kind of thing. And I went, oh, I never really thought of it. It is kind of like the head of a microphone type thing, a little bit, like those old school, little swirls things. So I thought that was interesting. So would you say change or something we would regret?
If there was something that you wanted to change about any one thing over the last 10 years.
I think it would have been, yeah. Those conventions, one of the things that made the show grow early on was that first big convention tour in 2006, I think it was, when we had this shirt and we went, like most of us went to all those places. It would have been great to do a few more of those, like every other year. And we did. I mean, because we all did go to, we went to a lot of conventions. But to go even in like full force, because that was a great way to get out there and to meet people, meet the listeners, go to new conventions in different areas, to just go and say, okay, here's the people in the Southwest, and here's the people here and there. Like, that was a fun part of the show that helped make it grow. So that would have been something, like just, go to even more conventions. Yeah, that would have been fun.
I think if I could have somehow figured out a way to convince more of our friends to come on, like Scott and Bill and John and Tyrus. I mean, if Tyrus was on the air, could you imagine? Yeah. Imagine Tyrus and Murd going on about some series. It would just be. I think everyone's iPods would explode of awesomeness, right?
Now,
One time we could have coaxed him with a Chipwich.
Chipwich, right? Go out to there's a vending machine right out there. Yeah. So he played Paperboy on
correct
on the Crusaders.
Yep,
right?
and he worked with us at
He works for superhero stuff right now.
Yeah. Don't believe I've ever actually met the man, but I kind of wish I had.
He's an amazing human being.
and like John was really good. Like John would talk about like The Walking Dead the one time he was on, and Alex and his Star Blazer stuff.
Yeah.
Jamie of Earth 2, the episode Matt did with Dana and Dave LaMotta.
Was it alternate? What did we call it?
It was episode 666.
The Cabal.
Yeah, what if
No.
The Cabal was
What if
No,
Matt
that was
created Comic Geek Speak? Wasn't that what it was?
That was a fun episode.
Hey, I wish we would at some point do that script that was sent to us for the Crusaders.
Marty Devine.
That was about 8 years ago. Marty sent that script in. Yeah, we're going to get to it, Marty, one of these days.
Yeah. Best laid plans.
Yeah. That was a tough question you asked us there, Bill. Yeah.
Now we had to think.
To coin a phrase.
Should have been less than the bird.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
We know what you think. Now, if I thought hard about it, there are probably hundreds of little stupid things I've said behind the microphone that I wish I could take back, and many interviews when we used to do those when I wish I could have spoken up, said more, asked a key question here or there instead of just sitting there like a lump of lead as I too often do during interviews. But the nice thing though about being an open-ended thing like this podcast we've got going here, 10 years and no end in sight, is that for every regret that we have, we've got lots of time left to maybe in some future episode in some way set it right. Did something wrong that you wish you'd done differently in the past? There's how many more episodes of Comic Geek Speak to come when we can make amends for that and do a better job in the future. So maybe that's why we're like Brian's shark brain here, where we're always moving forward. Shark brain.
I wish more things were like Brian's shark brain.
I'm more of a pufferfish myself.
Merge, you say that, and you say that, I'm thinking of that Muppet skit. So they waddled away, waddle, waddle, and
even I didn't get that one, Shane. I'm sorry.
You never saw that skit on a Muppet Show?
I don't think I have, no.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Sharks getting the guppy fish running away from the sharks.
I got a question for Brian and Peter. When you first started out, what was your first feedback you got from anybody? And, what did they have to say?
I don't remember.
Because I was listening to those earlier, there is someone that... I think it was Omar from Los Comic Geekos.
Oh, maybe.
And then there was another guy who emailed, and we read it on the air. It's on the air. Like the first email, the first voicemail, the first Geek of the Day, which was an old segment, the first submitted Stump the Rios. If you just look through all that stuff. The first interview was because of Tom Martinek. There's a lot of... We were good about acknowledging the listeners and all that stuff. The tagline is from Chris Whitting, Uniting the World.
Yeah, Whittington. Right?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, the logo, the character.
Joe Jans did the logo.
Yeah, we farmed out everything, and gave him some books, or something. Just yeah.
Well, when we tried stuff like Second Chance, it wound up going nowhere, so we had to outsource it.
Yeah. Well, but we got a lot of artwork on that.
Yeah.
It's a character we created on the show for one of the episodes. Could we do the thing that we are reading about? It was kind of interesting. So,
2 episodes in a
like the Stern Show, where he used to always say, you just do something, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and if it does, you roll with it, you beat it to death. So it was what we did. So, yeah.
Well, and I think, Billy, to sort of go back to your question is, well, I may not have anything absolutely particular that I want to change, right? All of us are sitting here with 10 years experience, and the show is still going on, so every new episode and every new, year that rolls by is like we're making changes based on things that we've decided that we should do slightly differently, even if it's just in our head that we're not communicating to anyone else, right? It's just constantly evolving, and those are all little changes you make along the way.
I regretted no more Crisis tape, not being on the Crisis tapes, like Adam and I doing the in-depth thing, and to go back to that point about, the breadth and scope of the show sort of crashing in on you around the loss of Jamie, and just sort of thinking about it and going, you know what, I missed that, but I know listeners wanted to hear that. And even if it was just 2 nudniks who think we know everything about Crisis, and we do. And it was like, okay, you know what, they want that. I kept seeing people requesting it, and I said, I have to do it again. Get off your high horse and stop using Skype because I didn't want to do it on Skype. I wanted to be in person and blah 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 blah, and and then we wound up doing 2 episodes, so it worked out.
Yeah, over Skype, and I think the results were just fine.
So there was a regret that reversed itself. So.
It's turning into the Sammy Maudlin show over here.
How much time do we have left on this?
Well, I don't know.
It's as long as we want it to be.
People are done.
Do you guys have anything else?
Yes.
Hi, guys. I'm Eric from Idaho. I just want to say, first of all, just like many others before me, thank you so much for the show and everything that you've given us over the last 10 years. As I wrote on my blog recently, you guys inspired me to start my own podcast. And I just love the medium. I love what you guys offer. I think you're one of the best things relating to comic books that's come out in the last 10 years. So thank you very much. My question just occurred to me while you guys were talking about the last thing was why you may continue to evolve and do the shark brain thing. What topics or what episode ideas that have come up where you guys are just like, no way are we doing that? And why?
Share those.
and yeah, if you want to share them. Yeah.
Well, first of all, mention your podcast, Eric.
Oh, thank you. Long Box Review. Thank you very much.
I mean, ones that we've actually done that we're never going to do again, or ones that we just never got around to producing?
Either way.
Probably never will.
Yeah. Preferably that one, yeah.
Okay.
Ones that someone suggested and was shouted down.
Yeah.
Okay. There have been tons of potential interviews that we've collectively decided not to do because we just weren't interested in the topic. And so we don't want to do a half-assed show where you're just sort of going through the motions because somebody asked us to interview them or we felt like we should do coverage of a certain thing or something. It's like, nah, we've done that a few times in the past and it's never any fun. So we're just like, sorry. If someone emails us like, hey, do you want to talk to me about my new book? And it's like, not really. Like, it's not like anything personal. It's just that we don't want to do, if we're going to have you on the air, it's because we want to talk to you, not because we're just like doing the right thing. It's like, no, we're going to do, this is our show, and we get to sort of talk about what we feel like talking about. And if we don't feel like talking about some book or interviewing some creator, it's not because we're being mean. It's just because it wouldn't be doing you any justice because it'd be all, no one's heart would be in it, right?
Just recently, there was an article on some clickbaiting site. I don't remember where it was. And it said the top 10 reasons why The Flash could have failed or something like that, the TV show, right? Like, let me pick top 10 reasons why this very popular show in another reality is failing, right? It didn't make sense. Like, why be so negative about that show? Like, why write an article about that? And I know we've responses on the forum or emails or just topics of like, let's do the 10 worst characters of the 90s or the 10 stupidest writers ever. You know what I mean? It's like, that's boring. Like, why? We can get into those. I'm sure in our conversations they've come up. But to do a specific thing about a negative thing like that, the 10... like the 10 worst costumes, I guess that's kind of fun and silly. But the real negative ones, I used to always hate those suggestions and would just never respond to an email if it said that or whatever. Because it's just coming from a bad place.
I think that was one of the things early on is that it wouldn't be, why does this miniseries suck? It would always be, why is this miniseries good? And if it was one that we collectively thought stank, we rather than address it, we just moved on from it.
If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Yeah. And again, it's not that we shied away from saying books were bad, in a conversation or like in a book of the month or somebody brought up on Twitter about that JSA miniseries where there were just editorial mistakes all over the place, and I had fun ripping it to shreds. But it was done it was almost still done out of a place of love, of like loving that kind of stuff. But to go full, that's no fun. That's never fun. I don't think we could. I mean, I think we probably could. But
we could.
We could. But it's not as much fun.
I think we could, but there's so many is going to sound preachy. There's so much negativity in the world now. I don't need to add to it. I'm trying to pull out of that stuff and relax, be happy, have a good time, pass on some laughs to everybody else. I don't need to be down on anything.
Who's next? Anything else?
Okay, so one of my earliest memories is there's a point to this. One of my earliest memories is I forget which episode. I think it's like 187, where Brian is talking about Black Friday and how his brother was in line at like Staples or Best Buy or something, and people are cutting the line, and the guy in front of his brother's like turns around and says, "Hold my spot," and then proceeds to punch out people that are skipping the line. My question is, which non sequiturs and silly moments and random stories are your favorites over the years? Because that's definitely one of mine. I still remember that to this day. I always laugh my ass off when I hear it.
I still get a good laugh out of my laws, baby, my laws.
Yeah, that's right.
Wait, is this a two-part question?
Another one was Peter's rendition of "You Get the Touch." That was beautiful.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I don't know how. I can't even remember half the stuff we talked about. No. Oh. Just like I can't remember any of the comics I read, I don't remember any of the stuff we talk about.
I think that's like the type of question that the listeners know. Like they know that. Sort of like with me and Stern, like us, and like if you sort of remember conversations, and they remember that kind of stuff. Like they'll come up and they'll say, "Oh my God, the time you guys just talked about, blah blah blah." You know, meeting Pants's mom was kind of cool. I don't know if that was
Mother Pants.
Cool.
Yeah, that was
Mother
fun.
Pants.
Mother Pants.
That was fun.
Slacks. We got to meet Slacks. I don't know. I can't. I mean, we talked about this on the show. But the absolute funniest moment I've had in our entire history that I can recall is in San Diego in 2006, in the hotel room, and Peter pantsed me when Matt's face was inches from my crotch. Like, he was putting on his shoe, and I was, like, getting my shirt on or something, and Peter's like, wonk, and Matt's like, wah! You know? I mean, we laughed for like 15 minutes straight, like in tears, because the timing was so perfect. That was absolutely the funniest moment.
And then I think anytime after that, when we got a hotel room together, when I would sleep like underneath the desk or something, so I know nobody could jump on top.
I liked when we were playing some kind of Queen song in there, and Peter's going, "Sing, you dead gay bastard, sing!"
That was a Flash Gordon thing. Yeah.
I mean, all the Uncle Sal episodes are off topic.
Oh my God!
Those you just show up for, and you say hi and sit back, and he
Yeah.
just goes,
Yeah.
and it's hilarious.
They're just amazing.
Yeah, you
When
learn
was
to
Sal on
participate in
first?
those.
He was on to. I mean, I'm sure Pants will look it up. It was going around trying to look for sponsors. Like we were starting to say, let's maybe we can help some people out, or we can make some money, or whatever. And I kept seeing Atomica like little banners, and I was like, oh, what is this? So I clicked on it and looked at it. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And just reached out. And he was such a cool dude that I don't know if he did research on us or listened to us. He was like, sure. And we were like, well, okay, let's bring you on. And he came on, and that earliest one is just him talking about Atomica, and you could sort of get a hint of the madness that was going to come. And then we brought him on again, and just started getting looser and looser until that poodle story came out. And that was it. Like, that was it. And we met him at a Wizard World Philly show. Yeah. And we said we agreed. We're like, let's take him out. It was him, Cousin Buzz. And we paid for it, and they were, they're like, no. And I remember them emailing or talking to Brian and saying they were worried. They were like, oh, who are these guys going to be? And we were just real. Like we just talked to them. We didn't talk to him about comics. We just talked about life, and we didn't come at him, through the Alex Ross art angle or anything like that. Like, and I think it was because of that. Like, we were just guys, and we probably reminded him of what he was like, and Buzz and all those guys when they were younger and going to conventions. And And he was just so open and honest, and just enjoyed the spotlight that he had on the show to be able to tell his wacky tales. And I think he appreciated that we were just guys just talking. Yeah.
So the earliest episode we can find, the first story time with Uncle Sal, is episode 108, February 20th, 2006. So
less than a year.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But let's see. We had him. It also looks like episode 74. It was top 5 first issues. He was on talking about Atomica.
So that's probably
that was just when that was before story time. That
Right,
was just him talking.
Yeah.
I want to actually ask a question since I haven't done that yet. So relating back to talking about movies that have had an impact and all that on kids and you guys as well. I'm curious what your favorite guilty pleasure adaptation of a comic is. Like one that isn't even necessarily good, but one you just always go back to and enjoy in one way or the other.
I can answer that. The Shadow. It's not that I think it's bad, but knowing what I know about the character, they so tried to crowbar it into the 90s perception of what comic book characters should be. And if you read the novel, it's so much better than the novelization of the movie. It's so much better than the actual movie that you saw.
For me, I would say Mystery Man, actually. Okay, but I know Brian likes this movie. Peter's apparently in my camp here, but it's compared to the the very straight-laced superhero adaptations of today, which are, shall we say, a little more respectful of the source material. It's definitely it's a comedy. It's kooky. It's bizarre. It's like steeped in late '90s post-camp treatment of superheroes. It's not even it's not that close to Bob Burden's own Dadaist take on superheroes, on which it's very loosely based. But still, it's funny stuff. It's got some very gifted comedians in it. It's got some great, if lame, superpowers and things. It's kind of inspiring, really, in a way. It's in its own bizarre comic way. It's inspiring to me personally that these people with these unconventional and underappreciated skills, the ability to shovel very well or to keep silverware well sorted, these people can still somehow manage to triumph over the forces of evil and save their unusual urban metropolitan home just by using these oddball talents of theirs. And it's a good message. It's got some unusual special effects, some great comic performances, and I've watched it many times, and it's one of my go-to films. And yes, I watch it on VHS.
Waffle Man!
That was Dane Cook. Do you realize that?
I mean, that's a movie that I've learned to grow and love over the years. When it first came out, and even after it first came out, I didn't really think much of it. I just thought it was this campy, kind of almost pissing on comics. I didn't obviously, because I didn't watch it and really pay attention to it. That's what I expected it to be. But then I started to watch it, and then I enjoyed it. And then to me, it's one of those movies that still holds up. Like I could sit down and watch that today and really enjoy it. And that I can't say about all the comic movies and interpretations and such. So it is something for me that became an evolution to appreciate and love that movie. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. Flash Gordon. I mean, I've waxed rhapsodic about the movie on the air before, but it's still one of the most glorious, ludicrous. I don't even call it a guilty pleasure. I'm proud of how much I love that movie and how utterly absurd it is. And yet at the same time, it's loving reverential treatment of the source material in its own way. So, and as you noted before, about got great Queen music, and it's just.
Did you see Ted?
I've seen. Oh yeah, Ted, of course. Yeah. So that would be my selection.
I'd have to agree with Chris. I can't think of a better candidate than that.
Going along with Matt's Shadow, I'd also go with The Phantom. Anytime that's on, I watch it. I love it. And also, love it or hate it when it got to this level. I love Batman Forever. It was on again last week, and son of a gun, if I didn't sit down and watch the whole damn thing.
I'm going to change my list of regrets. Billy, what would I change?
That would be Batman and Robin.
How can you...
What? Batman Forever? Here we go. It's fun.
That's not bad.
No, it's not. Batman and Robin is bad.
Batman and Robin sucks, but Batman Forever isn't bad.
Yes, it is.
I'm actually in their camp
It's
here.
at the abyss. It hasn't gone
It
over
didn't
the
cry. It was
abyss.
damn close, but it's still fun.
Oh my!
Some things I just can't agree with you on. You didn't like the end of Lost. That's just crazy.
No, it's not.
I'd have to say for me, it has to be the Spider-Man TV show from the 70s, which I can openly feel comfortable saying it in a forum like this now. But before, it's something that I think it's more nostalgia than anything else, just because of the fact that obviously it's not a great show. But in an essence, to me, reflecting as a kid, again in the 70s, taking into consideration. What did we have up to that point? We didn't have internet. We didn't have a lot of comic adaptations. At that point, we had Wonder Woman and the Hulk, and that was pretty much, and obviously the serials and things that came before that. But that's all we ever had. So for me, being a Spider-Man fan for how many years growing up, to see a Spider-Man TV show, I was profoundly excited to to see something come to formulation, in on TV that I could sit down and watch as a fan, and somewhat holds up to me. I look at it now. I go back and I've watched it numerous times. I collect pictures from it. I try, but I think it's more of a nostalgia thing, obviously, than an enjoyment thing. But I kind of look at it as a Spider-Man year one. To me, there's some things that are plausible in that essence. Whereas we look at the big major motion picture movie and he goes right into having that perfect costume and all that stuff. You know what I mean? To me, that kind of stuff looked like that could fit for me as somebody who likes a character. Like, okay, he got his powers before there's supervillains, before he had the right costume. Those things kind of, as much as it gets chewed up for. I can say like that's my Spider-Man year one kind of thing. So I kind of enjoy that part of it. Those things that bring that enjoyment, and then the other thing, it has to be the Hulk and Lee movie, which I know I just watched it I think twice already this year because they've been showing it a lot on like the pay channel, like movie channels and stuff like that, and I like it. I do, and I still like it. Granted, it's not perfect, but I like it. Yes, he's still there.
Is he going to conventions or anything?
Occasionally, he's gone to ones in California, and he's also, from what I'm reading now, he's on Twitter. He lives in Australia, actually. He writes and produces as well as still acts, but he's going to one, I think, in England. He was invited to go to one to England, which, little known fact, he's well renowned before he obviously became Spider-Man, but before that he was in The Sound of Music. He was one of the Von Trapp boys. So,
oh my God, that's right.
Chad, you didn't know that?
He is.
So when you go back and watch The Sound of Music,
yes.
he's the oldest Von Trapp boy.
One.
Yeah, that was one of his first big roles.
Yeah, I forget what his name is.
Frederick, I think so. I think that's what it was. Frederick Nicholas Hammond. Check it out. But yeah, that's where he was from. And I recently just read a article that I didn't know. I knew they were, when Bill Bixby was doing those Hulk movies after the TV show ended, and he was doing those movies. The next movie that they were going to do after the last one was a Spider-Man TV show, Hulk TV show team-up. That was going to be the next guest star. They had the whole thing put in place. Bill Bixby had contacted Nicholas Hammond and asked him if he would do it. And he said, he had his own little parameters that he said, I would do it if we make sure that, it's a serious thing, that there's a reason why we do it, there's a good script for the show. He said, if as long as it's treated, with respect, I would be interested in doing it. And it had gone so far into pre-production. And in fact, they were going to use the black costume for Spider-Man. They weren't going to use the red and blue one, which, by the way, he also said in the same article that the original costume for the TV show was red and black. But they changed it because of the way it used to show up on film against other things, that the blue popped out where the black didn't, so they changed that. But anyway, they went into pre-production, and the only reason why it never finalized, they had to go through all the rights issues between Universal, who had Hulk, and Columbia, who had Spider-Man. They had to straighten all that legal bullshit out There's a dime.
They left.
When they finally got everything together, Lou Ferrigno was in Italy filming that glorious Hercules movie that he did. So they had to wait for him to come back from that. And then when he came back, something else came up. And then after that, unfortunately, Bill Bixby got sick and inevitably passed away. So it never got made. But as a fan, that's something I wanted to see. And I didn't, you think all these years I never knew that. And I only found that out within the last year. So I sit there and go, what would that have been like? You know?
Just imagine someday we might be able to see Spider-Man and the Hulk now in a movie. At some point, just to see those two.
I think, in essence, for me, it's kind of one of those things. In that essence, at that time, in the late '80s, early '90s, I mean, again, you didn't have a lot of comic movies and stuff like that. So seeing it now, I don't think it would have. I mean, it'll be cool, but to see those two on a TV show done respectively well, I think would have more of an interest to me. But I don't know. That's cool. I digress.
You're up, Bruce.
Hey, just taking one step back. You were talking about humorous things on the show, and I got to tell you what a great inspiration you guys were for Steve and I to put out the next issue of Dutchie Digest, because we knew when we sent it to you, you guys would get all Dutchified and go crazy.
Do it. Do your accent.
Do it, monkey.
Do it.
I've lived around here my whole life, and my Pennsylvania Dutch accent is one of my worst. So.
Brian can do it.
I can't just come up with something on the fly. Let it happen naturally. I'm not an actor.
He has to have a script.
You don't want me to do dialect. I suck.
Hey, nah.
Well, Lem was a good with that because he was pretty Dutchy, and we had this one guy. God, I don't remember. Is Scott still here? No. There was this guy who used to come into the Penn Avenue store. He would come in from Lancaster. He was an older guy. Well, at the time, he seemed older, right? He was in his 50s. And he would say, anytime something was like crazy, instead of saying get out or, oh, that's crazy, he would say, get the net. And he would say in this real, get the net, like in a very Dutchy accent, he'd do that. And it was so funny. It was like, because he was there every Wednesday without fail, and he was always getting the net. I don't know if that's a typical Dutchy thing or if that was just something he said, but boy, that struck me.
Okay. Did anyone in our studio audience come prepared with trivia questions today? Whether about comics or about the podcast? I think we have prizes.
I think we're going to wind up just giving them away.
Things that are off the air give away the prizes.
Who's the farthest? Who came the furthest? Farthest? Farthest?
Idaho,
Heard
and
Idaho?
Idaho, Utah, who else?
Other, so depends on
the city.
What part of Idaho? Moscow?
That's
Moscow.
Russia. Just say you're from Russia.
Pull up Google Maps.
All right, somebody pull up.
I think he might be a little further east or further west.
Further away?
Yeah.
Although the two furthest? We have 4 of those things we can give away. We can give away 2 of those. You'll each have, we have something for you. We'll give you something. A little something.
Something.
Well, who's the third closest or farthest? Somebody came from Ohio. That's far, right? So, and then what's closer than that? My geography's amazing. Is that it? Because Ohio's how many miles away?
Depends on where in Ohio.
How many miles?
But it's.
Well, there's 3. We got 3 to give away, and then we got one more.
Over 300 miles. So.
Who's the youngest?
Who's the youngest? Yeah, do that.
Who's the youngest? I'm assuming.
Mentally, or?
I got you beat then.
Because we're all still 9.
You want to tell him what this is?
You tell him. I don't know.
I will figure something out. Who's the youngest?
This is
Yeah, Peter's handing out copies of the hardcover collected edition of it. Was it the Gutters Volume 1, I believe? The Gutters online comic?
Yeah, he got it. That was easy. We got all those stuff too.
So who do we think's been on the most episodes?
Well, I have a question before that. How many episodes have we actually done now? Do you know the number? No,
I don't know the number.
Oh, Pants, you're math man. You always know that.
It's over
I told you I
2,000.
wasn't prepared.
Oh.
I don't think it's over 2,000, though.
I think
I guess
collectively, I think somebody posted it was over 2,000.
I know Ian did, but I don't think that's correct.
Well, if you count Mohatmu, that's kind of puffing up the numbers, but we shouldn't either.
I mean, we do some spin. Do we do spin-offs when we do the count or no?
We did
Well, sure, footnotes.
Yeah.
And
So isn't it like whatever the number is plus 270 or something like that?
So we're almost around 1,800, I would guess, if not a little more than 1,800.
Yeah.
Between 18 and 1,900.
And I was looking at numbers. There was a period of time when we weren't hosting with Libsyn, so we don't have any data from that 9-month period or something like that. But just on Libsyn, we've had 7 million downloads over the year. So then if you add in that 9 months of missing data, I don't know, 7.5 million, something like that. That's a pretty good amount of downloads, I think, for 10 years.
With how many episodes? It's about 2 an episode, right?
Yeah. 3 people listen to each episode, and you guys take turns, right? And then,
Podcasting in general was pretty young back then when you started. So,
well, yeah, I mean,
what other podcasts about anything have been going longer than you guys have continuously?
I don't know longer.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
Is Keith and the Girl still on? Still around?
I don't know.
Keith and the Girl and Dawn and Drew or whatever.
I don't have any idea.
Yeah. There's ones that, I mean, definitely there's other ones that are celebrating. Like I know Comic News Insider still going on, and they're all hitting their 10 year soon. Derek Coward, Comic Book Noise. I think of that first year, but yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure they're out there. We just don't know which ones. We're just too dumb to give it up.
Many, though. You guys have to have one of the longest running podcasts, not just comic podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
Somebody do the research on that, let us know.
I mean, certainly there were other podcasts going before you guys, but are they still going?
I always think about that, like when I see podcast conventions, like, big tech convention, they're all wrapped up in tech, podcast, tech. And I always think, we're giving, how to do your podcast, how to promote. And I always go, boy, we never get an email about saying, hey, come and talk about it, because we could talk about it. I think we've earned a right to sort of say, well, this is what we did, and it worked. I see them all the time, everybody in their suits and doing, all
suits.
Yeah, they are. It's like you see pictures of this, they kind of make me laugh, and I just sort of sit there and go, why don't you just do a podcast instead of talking about doing a podcast? Just do it. So,
yeah, chumps.
Yeah. Shoot. Freaking sweet.
Have we shot our bolt? Hi there.
Thanks, Pansy.
So we're coming up on 3 hours, I guess.
Yeah. I think that is 3
hours. Podcast
for
10 years. Hey, it's
25.
Yeah,
we got prizes to give away then afterwards. That's fine.
Okay.
What about before we go, if each of us give our favorite moments, one top moment over the past 10 years?
I don't even know how to do that.
You want us to collapse 10 years of this down to...
Yes, I command it.
There's that moment that's happening right now where we kick you out of the group. I don't know.
The one thing I keep coming back to is episode 775, Uncle Sal. I am literally on the floor laughing.
Uncle Maisie?
Yes, exactly. Uncle Maisie. That's exactly
His
right.
son in the kimono. And
that's exactly it.
That was crazy.
I got, I wish I could say it was at one convention where Kevin and I were leaving a Marvel party, and we went the wrong direction coming back, and it was cold, but we were drinking, so we were warm. That was a good time. There was another convention where Pete and I went into an adult bookstore right across from the hotel, but the
we got checked out by some people.
We did, yeah. But the moment I think would top everything, because I think was most revealing, not just for what I could do, but for what we could do, but was the Livestrong for Jamie. I hate running. I still hate running, but I trained so diligently to do that, and it was so important that I needed to run the whole thing. And, I mean, that's just for myself, but then to see everyone that showed up and the whole organization and stuff like that. It was an amazing day, I thought, to begin with. And I know we didn't really do an episode, but it's part of the community. So to me, that's the last 10 years. Unfortunately, he wasn't physically with us, but the fact that we rallied together to do that for him just tops everything else.
He was sitting in our tent off to one side, just chuckling and shaking his head and calling us all dumbasses for punishing our bodies like this.
I think maybe in 2005, so the summer of that first year, we decided to go to San Diego for the first time. For my first time, and Jamie decided to go with, and Tasha was going to come along, and Kevin was supposed to come. And miraculously that morning at like 5:45, when we're supposed to leave at 6, he's like, I'm not coming. That's a whole other story. I'll let him tell that someday. But it ended up being just Jamie and Tasha and I in San Diego for our first San Diego convention. And that was pretty cool because at the time, like, we hadn't like really gotten into the comic industry yet, and we hadn't gone to a million conventions together, and so we were still really just fans at that point, and the conventions hadn't lost any of their muster yet because we hadn't been to 100 of them in a tiny period of time. And it's the biggest one, and it was mesmerizing. We hadn't seen anything like it, and it was just Jamie, Tasha, and I. And since I knew Jamie the longest, and he was the guy that was the first person that I was ever really able to talk comics with, and he and I were just like bug-eyed walking around San Diego, going, "Holy shit! This we're actually here. It's so exciting." And we still didn't know anybody, and we got to interview Peter David, and it was like, oh my God, we're interviewing Peter David at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was like, that was has to be up there in the best moments, because that was a pretty cool thing. Because now, if you go to San Diego, it's just annoying. There's too many people, and my feet are tired, and I don't know enough people to go sit down everywhere I want to sit down, and I was like, but then we were just like kids in a candy store going around. So we had endless energy to walk around that convention for 4 days, and it was so exciting. That was pretty cool. Not that it wouldn't have been fun if Kevin was there too, but it sort of became this interesting thing because it was Jamie and I. And that's how I largely got started in really becoming a comic fan, was because of being with Jamie. So it sort of made sense that happened that way.
That's why I let it happen.
Yeah. You had your best interests at heart.
Yeah. I'm sure that was it.
Favorite moment related directly to recording the podcast? That one time that Peter and I spent 3 hours of moments, really, footnoting the cover to JLA Avengers #3. The apex of our collaboration, Peter, and new heights or depths of fanish involvement in the minutiae of the medium. Fun stuff. But outside of actually recording the podcast, I remember our first time at Third and Spruce. Related to one of the gatherings, whether it was episode 300 or maybe even the first Super Show. Just when you, Brian, rented out the entire second level of Third and Spruce, the bar and restaurant in West Reading. And I went up there and just seeing all these people suddenly recognizing me, shouting hello, and just spending the next 2 hours trying to move a few yards away from all the well-wishers around me. It was like, as I said to Chris later on, it was a little like being in a minefield of goodwill. And it was at that point it was impressed on me just how many friends we had managed to make with this little show of ours in a relatively short time. And it was an incredibly good feeling that I doubt I'll ever be able to match. So call that a CGS high for me.
In terms of recording, it's whenever we do the off-the-cuff singing in the studio, which sometimes Pans does record, actually.
Yeah.
You make special apps for them sometimes, right? Don't you? Yeah.
Sure.
Those are they're organic and they just happen and they're just so much fun. And then otherwise, we're thinking of our trip to Pittsburgh to the Alex Ross exhibit.
Oh, that was a good
at the Andy Warhol Museum. Our Wild Pig crew and Tasha and Jamie.
Yeah.
I met our friend Dan out there, and that was a great time. Incredible exhibit, just all of us there together. Jamie thoroughly enjoyed it. Plus the amusement of the hotel room, because you wisely got your own room, and the rest of us were all. It was these three people here, myself, Jamie, in that one room.
Was that the first time you'd shared a hotel room with Jamie?
Yes.
And the first time you were introduced to his thunderous snoring?
Yes.
Wow.
So what happened was, it was December in Pittsburgh. It was frickin' cold. I almost went out to my van and slept in the van for the night. It was hilarious.
We can all relate.
And you knew, like, you were already kind of mocking us when you left to go to your own room. And I was like, what's going on? And then I understood it as time passed.
He arranged that for you.
It was classic.
Do you remember, I have a story, do you remember going, was it San Diego maybe, or New York, walking in, and it was a Rob Liefeld and a whole bunch of...
Oh, my God. It was San Diego.
Was it a Tilted Kill?
It was San Diego. So we got somebody, I think Joe Keating was the head of marketing for Image at the time. And he was like, "Oh, you guys should come to the Image party. It's at, the Tilted Kill or whatever." And we're like, "All right, we'll do that." So it was me, Murd, and Jamie. Right?
No,
it was
you
were there too?
Yeah, because I remember getting kicked out.
I don't remember you being there. That's funny. So we go up to the hostess, and we're like, "Oh, we're here for the Image party." And she's like, "Oh, okay." Because I don't know. We were just thinking like it's going to be a room of people drinking and talking and a bunch of commotion and stuff. And she takes us into this like small room, and there's like only like 4 round tables with people sitting very quietly talking and stuff, and there's like this bench at the end of the room where the door is, and like we walk in and we don't know anybody in the room, and everyone's sort of looking at us, and then Liefeld gets up and goes out of the room, gets the hostess, and comes back, and she's like, "You're gonna have to leave." And we're like, "We don't even know why we're here. Like, we were told to come here, and now Liefeld is kicking us out of the party." We didn't even say anything to anyone, just standing there like a bunch of morons, like looking at our phones, and they weren't even smartphones. It was just like, "Please, a text message if you're not here." It was the most awkward moment of my life, I think.
That was great.
In a terrible, terrible way.
In a terrible way.
Yeah.
Because we have that story now.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Oh.
What year was that?
It had to be 2008.
Or 8?
Because I only went 6 and 8.
And it wasn't 6.
So it was
because I
either
with
6 or 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really? Was it really 8?
Yeah.
But Tasha was there. I know, but you weren't at the party though, right? Because we had the baby. Maybe you were at the hotel. I don't. To that party, to that awkward moment where we got kicked out. Oh, I don't know. Wow. I can't remember anything. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess
Met the girl from Brazil. One waitress.
What was the year that you and was it Kevin that got screwed out of the Todd McFarlane thing?
That
And then
was
we
the
found
first-
out who's the one that was responsible for.
It's Chris Ilya.
Oh,
yeah,
was that?
Chris Hill,
Okay.
That was the very first New York Comic Con.
Yeah,
We were
in
supposed
New
to
York,
have
yeah.
And I got the date wrong. We were supposed to interview McFarlane at the MoCA for the McFarlane art exhibit. It was supposed to be Friday, but I thought it was Saturday, so we showed up Saturday, and the guy's like, "Why weren't you here yesterday?" And then we waited and waited and waited, and McFarlane was like 2 hours late, and so then we couldn't do the interview, and it was a whole big disaster. Yeah. But the exhibit was really cool.
He was late because he was at dinner with Chris Iliopoulos.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So I remember you telling him you owe me a dinner with.
Oh,
Todd
yeah.
McFarlane.
Well, I'm still holding him to it.
Anything else? You done? Anybody else's ass hurt from these seats? Oh, you got cushions. That's why. You son of a bitch.
This chair's all right. He's no dummy.
Pants, we've shot our bolt, I guess.
Any last? I'm sorry. Anything out there? Any last? No. Anything? No? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope it was interesting.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com.
An episode is an episode.
Pan said, "Shane, I'm ready."
You didn't memorize this?
No, I can't memorize it. Send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642.
So funny.
What now?
Let's keep going.
Persevere.
Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We do appreciate it. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes,
one listener at a time.
52.
All right. 22.
We're leaving me hanging.